Ready? Everybody ready? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the committee meeting of August 20th. We will start off today with our Parks and Rec Transportation Committee.
Okay, calling to order Parks and Recreation Transportation Committee. Can the clerk please read the first item?
Minutes of the August 6, 2025 Parks and Recreation Transportation Committee meeting.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? The members? Seeing none. Or public testimony? Meetings? Nope. Calling the meeting back to order. For final discussion? Nope. Seeing none. Calling the vote. No objections and having no further business. Oh wait. All of those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none. The hearing for Parks and Recreation Transportation Committee is now adjourned.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Planning Committee to order. Let the record reflect all members are present. Committee members and non-committee members, we got 8 bills today to review. So I'm just going to go over just a quick review of how today's going to go. First, we're going to have each bill will have a presentation, a quick update from the planning team. Then we'll go into questions for planning if you guys have any. Then testimony, then discussion, and if we are good with the discussion, if there's any amendments, we can do it during the discussion. And if there's any amendments, then we can call the vote, then we can vote then. Members, just quickly reminder, when we're in the questions section with any of our presenters, make sure to start with a question. That way we can be succinct because we do have 8 bills to review. I don't want to get stuck on any one bill unless we need to spend the full time having the discussion. So, clerk, could I get the first bill, please?
Bill number 2961, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 8 and Chapter 10, Kauai County Code 1987, as amended, relating to the Plantation Camp District Wildfire and Wildland Urban Interface.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Planning Director?
Good morning, Chair, members of the Commission, Council, sorry. Too used to the Planning Commission days. Kaua'i Hall on behalf of the Planning Department. I'm joined here with Fire Chief Gibson and Elizabeth Pickett from Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. Just to give a little primer of what we're doing here today. Some history of the Plantation Camp zoning project, if you will. Going back to the West Kauai Community Plan update, we found that the plantation camps were all sitting on agriculturally zoned land. Several of them had state land use urban designations, but they were on County of Kauai agricultural zone lands, which meant virtually all but 5 of the plantation camp homes in each of the camp were non-conforming structures, and essentially were not allowed to rebuild. Essentially, they could repair and renovate it up to the 50% of the assessed value threshold. And so, recognizing that these camps exist as communities today, but the de facto policy of the zoning ordinance is to amortize these uses out and move the tenants eventually somewhere else. Recognizing that was a problematic policy to have on the books. The department, through the plan, worked with the community, worked with the landowners to get plantation camp zoning so that at the very least they could rebuild the structure to the exact same footprint, size, and dimensions that existed. There's also discussions towards the end of the West Kauai Community Plan update of not only should they maybe be allowed to rebuild, but these camps exist as communities. They should be allowed to evolve and grow. And so we kind of basically felt that was appropriate as well. And so we came back. We spent 2 years drafting form-based codes for Kamakani Avenue and Kamakani Camp so that additional growth could happen adjacent to that camp, but done in a form and character that was in keeping with the existing historical plantation camps. So that was the first part of the project, and we are spinning up the second part of the project to do the remaining camps, which is Numila, camp in Kaua'i, or also known as Camp 6. And so we are eyeballs deep in that process about a year ago. The Kaua'i fire had happened, which essentially Kaua'i almost burned. There's also Lahaina had happened. And that's where we kind of turned to the fire folks and said, you know, is there anything we should be doing to address wildfire mitigation in the built environment? And the response we got from the fire industry folks was, in a high wind wildfire situation, that is the only response you can do to prevent a community from burning. In a high wind event, it will burn if it has not been constructed in a manner that deals with wildfire. And from that, we're kind of like, okay, we were hesitant to pursue further development pattern styles for the camps without bringing in wildfire measures to them. And that's kind of essentially why we're here and what we're doing today. We're looking at wildfire mitigation in the camps, and then also the form-based codes themselves. But that kind of tees up what we're doing. I kind of want to turn it over to Fire Chief, as well as Elizabeth, to kind of go over wildfire and help the council understand where these measures are coming and what mitigation is necessary. So, Chief, Elizabeth.
Please turn on your mic. Please turn on your mic and introduce yourself, please.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Pickett. I'm the co-executive director of Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. We're a nonprofit that has been focused on wildfire mitigation, prevention, planning, education for 25 years in Hawaii. And we wrote the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for Kaua'i. We're about to do the update, and we have lots of stuff going on with fire department and with forestry and wildlife. That said, going into this, it was clear that not everybody was working with the same foundation of information when it comes to what really leads to wildfire risk. And I thought it might also be helpful to start this morning's meeting off with some foundational information so that you have some of that fire background too as you're thinking this through. The first thing that is really important to understand is just that fires are increasing. That's the case. It has been the case for several decades. We've seen that on the natural landscape. We have lots of impacts from wildfire that have to do with natural resources. And we always had a hard time making a case for the fact that wildfire is a big deal because it hadn't yet burned any homes or very minimal, I should say. And then as soon as Lahaina happened, all of a sudden people are realizing that wildfires have that potential of igniting the built environment. And our built environments are not ready. So with that said, it's also important to understand how fire travels and how it can propagate across the landscape in towns and homes. And really, fire spreads in three ways. So the first is what we picture most frequently, which is that fires ignite from direct flame contact. You know, the fire just keeps burning the next thing and the next thing. Things can also ignite just from superheated air, radiant heat. But the thing we worry about most, which makes a difference when wildfires come close to a town, is that they travel and can ignite multiple places at once through embers. And this is not just a couple embers. This is like a blizzard of embers. And those embers find the crack in every roof, the open vents. They go under homes. They ignite leaf piles in, rain gutters or wherever they are around around the home and yard. And that ember ignition issue is really what has been burning down towns across the country and the world. So that's what happened in Lahaina. It's what happened in Los Angeles, Colorado, Marshall Fire. Our organization and myself have been able to go to these areas and be part of the investigation afterwards and the analysis. And these homes are burned from the inside out. And the way that the fires are traveling is one house, 7 houses, hundreds of houses, et cetera. And that is purely from the fuels within the built environment. So typically across Hawaii, because we've had fires in the wildland environment, we think of grass and undeveloped land as the main issue. That is still an issue if we're trying to protect water quality, erosion, native forest, all of that sort of stuff. But it doesn't matter what ignites the built environment. It could be a wildfire. It could be a kitchen fire that burns a house on a really heavy windy day. And the fires will still act the same way and take the whole town if we don't have ember resistance built into the building materials and to the design of setbacks and, you know, protected spaces and buffers around the home. And what we're really trying for here is to protect against ember ignitions. That said, I wanted to talk about why codes and thinking about it from that perspective is our best tool. We are already in the situation where we are left to educate, hope people retrofit their homes, hope that they can fix what we got wrong in the planning ahead of time, and now it's expensive, it's hard to do, it's hard to enforce, and it's never as effective as building safe from the start. So our best strategy is to, from here forward all across Hawaii, and especially in our fire-prone areas on Kaua'i and elsewhere, is as we move forward and think what we're building next, we don't have to repeat the same mistakes. From here forward, we can build safer from the start. And then any of those mitigation activities, mowing, weed whacking, sweeping, raking, all the things that we're already encouraging people to do, have a fighting chance to make that final difference, because what is built and planned and designed is already safe from the get-go. So that said, the code that has been developed by the planning department, I wanted to just give some background on the fact that we pulled in the best of the best from the world to work on this together. There are some key subject matter experts, our own in-state experts. We all came together with fire department and planning and others across the county to make sure that we used the best practices to ensure safety, but to actually tweak and adapt them to, you know, Kauai's needs, the setup of the plantation camps. We really made sure that it was appropriate for the area, and also that it made sense in general from a logistical point of view, cost point of view, all that sort of stuff. So there's been a lot of thoughtful consideration by a team of really dedicated, passionate people who want to get this right, to make sure that our most fire-prone areas have some safety built into them as we move forward. So with that, it's probably clear because I've been going on and on, but our organization really strongly supports adopting these standards. This is forward-looking so that we don't have to have this conversation later and talk about recovery. We don't want to see that anymore, and so we want to get this right from the start, because the built environment is the only thing that can protect a community in these extreme wind events, wind-driven fires. So with that, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Chief?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First, I have to say, as fire chief, very fortunate to have Kaina and his entire department, and Elizabeth and the HWMO. Some fire departments have the luxury of having these within their own departments, divisions, and bureaus. You know, we're very small and we do not. So, and on this island, everything takes the entire community to get something done. There's not one agency that can do something like this. So with this, I'm going to try to stick to what I plan to talk about. Starting with wildfire risk, and I'll already stop at the word wildfire. Wildfire has been our accepted term, and with the media and public facing, is what we're faced with, this threat. And the threat actually is the wind-driven fires, the high wind. We saw that with the examples Elizabeth provided: Marshall Fire in California, Camp Fire, Lahaina, and here on Hanapepe and Kamakani. We had that same fire. We were fortunate that the wind was only moving to the speed at which it was, which I think was at points 30 miles an hour top gust, so 15 to 20 sustained, which you give us those conditions and the resources that we have on this island and that we're stacking up, we're going to be able to fight those fires. But with any higher velocity winds, we won't be able to. And the only thing that can save these homes, these neighborhoods and communities, are hardening these homes, creating the defensible spaces, everything that's wrapped into this plan. So I wanted to kind of show some examples in history where there's been opportunities like this to make a code change that'll save lives and property. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a white paper report, America's Burning, and it highlighted that thousands and thousands of people were dying in residential fires just because they didn't know there was a fire in their house. So with that came smoke detectors installed in homes, where now it's required. And by the year 2000, those fatalities were cut in half, and they continue to shrink. Unfortunately, there's still some, but it has made a major difference. High-rise sprinkler requirements. You look back in the 1980s, some of us were around, I think. Looking forward, many of you might remember the MGM fire in Las Vegas. About 80 people were killed. And there were a few other tragic events, one in Philadelphia where some firefighters were killed in the high-rise because there were not sprinklers in those high-rise buildings. And so with that, there's become coding with over so many stories. Sprinklers are mandated. We have had fires in the early 1900s and as recent, the last 20 years that I can remember, in Rhode Island, where because there was not enough egress in a nightclub, that hundreds of people were killed because the exits were too narrow or blocked, or locked in some cases. So codes were put in place that doors open outward where the panic is, and countless lives have been saved because of that code. And now we have the WUI, Wildland Urban Interface tragedies, which we've had major loss of life and property, which we already talked about. And we have an opportunity to be one of the first places in the country that would make a code requiring these different, not only designs in the homes and the mesh and screen and hardscaping and the 0-5, nothing can burn in that area, but getting the community aware and involved to do cleanups, be aware of the hazardous vegetation that needs to be cut back. And there's stuff that's not in the code that is going to help us promote fire-safe communities by not cutting grass on the hot days when it's windy, and we've had some recent incidents involving those. So the key takeaways for our island is that we cannot wait for disaster to strike again. We have right now an opportunity to implement some measures that can make us safer, and I'm going to end my report now. Thank you.
And I can just go into briefly essentially what the code is doing essentially from a regulatory standpoint. And I'll say, and thank you so much to Elizabeth in part in helping assemble the team that reviewed this code. You have Elizabeth, you have Chief, and you have me here, but Kima was definitely part of the team assessing and inputting on it. Folks that were formerly in DOFA were definitely reviewing it, but Elizabeth hooked us up with some internationally renowned experts, and so much to the point I was reading the Wall Street Journal or BBC the other day, and there was Dr. Barrett. And I was like, Dr. Barrett's on our team, and she's being referenced in all these other international media sources. But anyways, it was a great team. But in a nutshell, to go back to the bill, the first part of the bill is concerning the house itself, and that's the home hardening requirements. And we definitely are looking at, taking a step back. Looking at fire-rated walls and fire-rated construction, which we're used to that terminology, I was kind of dumbfounded when I found out fire-rated walls have nothing to do with saving a structure the way it's threaded into our code right now. Fire-rated walls.
Fire-rated
They can withstand a flame for 20 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on the rating. Fire rating in building code today, the sole purpose of fire-rated walls is to ensure that evacuation on a multi-story building can happen in a timely manner to save lives. But the building's going to burn. That's the way fire-rated walls are used today. And so pairing that with the fact that what Elizabeth talked about, the primary source of wildfire spread that we see in these communities is embers. We decided to look, 90% of homes that are burned from a wildfire, that started with embers. 90% is rooted in ember intrusion. So, okay, from a cost-benefit analysis, looking at making ember intrusion the primary thrust of this bill and the impacts that embers can have is where we focused. So on the home, The roof is one of the biggest points of vulnerability, and you're watching insurance companies now bail out on anybody that has a wooden roof. It's just too much of vulnerability. So they can have asphalt shingle, or they can have metal roofs in the camps under the proposed code. And asphalt shingle is cheaper than wooden shingles. So from a cost-benefit standpoint, it's allowing that mitigation measure to be in place, and is the first part of the home hardening requirements. The second part of the home hardening requirements have to do with the vents. That the embers can get in those vents, and once they get into the attic where the insulation is, it's going to ignite the home. All you have to do is have metal vents and screening to be put over the vents at about 1/8 inch, and that prevents the ember intrusion from happening. And is very low cost. The third approach, you would think would be the walls. Okay, we got to have fire-rated walls. But the fact of the matter is, in the ember, a blizzard of embers, T111 and wooden walls, the way we generally construct, can withstand those embers. The embers are going to hit it, and then it's going to fall. So allowing wooden construction is still allowed under the bill. It's what happens when those embers drop and can interact with 90-degree interface. So while wooden walls are allowed, the interface at the base of a lanai or a concrete area, you just need 6 inches under the code of flashing, essentially, to address embers sticking around and being able to eventually light a wall on fire. So that's the third area of the home hardening. And then the last part of it is if you have a house that's elevated, which post and pier construction is fairly prominent in Hawaii, not so much in other areas of the country, but here in Hawaii it definitely is. And so we spend a lot of time assessing how to make that vulnerability and mitigate ember intrusion, and it's going back to that fire mesh again. Essentially providing fire mesh under screening so you prevent the embers from getting under the house and igniting anything that's under the house. And from a home hardening standpoint, that's the requirements as proposed. And relatively nominal cost. You're kind of talking about 2, 3, depending on the size of the house, 2,000 to 3,000, maybe 4,000 for the screening and the flashing. The second area of the code is then focused on zone 0, and that's the 0 to 5 feet around the house. And that is the next major point of vulnerability, right? If you have combustible material, things that embers can sit on, that is still very likely to ignite the house, especially when you have the ability to still have wooden walls. There were videos we were showing, like how many times a broom just leaning against the house was a major vulnerability. In a high ember event, it's going to hit that wall, right, and just bounce off and land. But when it lands, that broom, the bristles are extremely flammable usually, so it lights the bristles on fire. That climbs up the broom, and now you've got direct contact of flame on a house wall for several minutes, and that's going to be the vulnerability. So making sure that that 5 foot also has a non-combustible, is determined to be a non-combustible area, and interfaced with requiring it to have hardscape. That's the second main area of the bill. That does come with a bit more cost than the initial home hardening areas, and we definitely were making assessments of a cost-benefit analysis, because we understand, any time you look at housing and you increase costs, there's always going to be some eyebrows raised. But this is a definitely identified area that needs to be mitigated, and so that hardscape is a requirement of the code. The next area of the code is zone 1, which is the 5 feet, 5 feet to 30 feet outside of the house, and there's just maintenance for vegetation requirements. For the new areas of the plantation camps, these are hard and fast regulations on vegetation. For the existing camps, Pakala, Kamakani, there's a requirement to work with the fire department to get code compliant. But as long as there's work in progress and moves are being made, we're not going in there and going to be the tree police and tell the grandma she got to cut down the mango tree that's been there for 4 years. Like that's not, the tree police aren't going to come out hardcore in existing camps, but there needs to be work under the draft code made to bring them eventually into compliance. And then the last area is the 30 feet to 100 feet. And a lot of that has some vegetation requirements as well, but that's where we're looking at some of the fire-prone vegetation. Guinea grass has to be kept at a certain height in order to mitigate flame spread. But that's essentially, the last part, and the chief was getting to it too, is the last part of the code, which is very different from anything we've come across, but in understanding, especially working with Elizabeth's team and the fire chief and the fire prevention captain who lives in the camps, understanding that how you maintain this space is just as important as the home hardening requirements. You have home hardening requirements, but if you're putting a bunch of firewood next to the wall, then what's the point? That firewood is definitely a vulnerability and can ignite the whole house. So having a requirement that the camp owners do a 1-year annual educational workshop for all the tenants, which more than likely Elizabeth and the fire chief are going to be doing, but they have to do the annual with their tenants so they understand the maintenance. And then with that workshop, also a 1-year annual cleanup of the existing camps so that the camps can work towards having a much more defensible space around the existing homes. So that's also a requirement in the code, in the draft code, I should say. But that essentially is the code in a nutshell on how the regulations work. Elizabeth, Fire Chief, and I are here for any questions or concerns.
Thank you guys for the presentation. Council members, questions? Councilmember Cowden?
First of all, thank you for giving us a good presentation. That's really meaningful. I also want to acknowledge and thank land users and representatives of landowners who are in the room. That matters deeply to me. When I look at this, I look at this as probably a precursor beyond the camps. Is that likely?
I think this is part of a package of upzoning, right? We're proposing essentially additional density for the camps so the camps could evolve. And we're focused, our primary focus has been the camps and the way wildfire mitigation happens. I think whenever you look at any upzoning, we're looking at any proposals, whether the county initiates it or the private landowner initiates it, any upzoning, if they are in fire-prone areas, it may, it should require an analysis of prevention measures. When you're talking about like larger, broader implications, any type of code adjustments on a broader scale necessitate really interaction and engagement with the communities.
So I appreciate the work, and I read through it, and this isn't my skill set. So when you guys are all working together, thank you. And have you been working with the landowners, that they can have access to these materials and in agreement on all the designs?
Oh yeah, definitely. We've been working very closely with both PBCP and GNR on the implementation of the code and how it affect their future development patterns. They've definitely been at the table.
Okay, and I just want to also acknowledge you have managed retreat at the beginning of this. You didn't mention about managed retreat. I'm assuming since they're in the room that they're all right with the managed retreat.
Oh yeah,
so you want to describe that? That might be something else that would be possibly considered in other places.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I should have brought that up. I forgot. The primary thrust of this is definitely wildfire. But there's a portion of one of the plantation camps, Kaua'i camp, that's on the ocean. And some of those homes, and those homes don't have a form-based code. They have straight up just the plantation camp zoning, which means they can knock down and rebuild those homes. But some of those homes are in the shoreline setback area. So pursuant to the shoreline setback, they really wouldn't be able to build them without extensive variance applications being done. And quite honestly, some of them might not get approved because of the coastal erosion in the area. So right behind Kaua'i camp, we've designated an area through the zoning process, through the zoning map, which is technically a separate bill, where there's no development rights in that particular area right now. What we're saying is that area can be used for the managed retreat of those coastal structures. Should the landowner want to rebuild them, they can build them over there, and also the wildfire requirements will be placed on it. So it's not a full-blown transfer of development rights, which I know some people will look down like, ooh, Kauai's doing transfer of development rights. It's like it's not because it's from owner to owner. It's the same owner, but it's a transfer of development rights on training wheels.
Okay, and I just have one last question. Thank you guys for your patience with my question.
Any other council members? Any follow-up questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Cowden.
Walkable mixed-use commercial use. So that looks like that would be at Numila. That would be at Kaua'i, which is Camp 6. So I was kind of surprised at mixed use up there. Don't have a problem with it. But when I think mixed use, I mean, that seems like commercial businesses. So we'd have commercial businesses all the way up there at Camp 6?
No, so the main thrust of the commercial element in that section is actually describing Kaua'i, where you have that commercial use in the front, where you have the pizza place now and the bakery shop. But Kaua'i and Pakala historically had a store in it, and so there is an element of the code that allows. I think in Kaua'i it's a ratio of like one store for every 200 homes or something. So it's a very small amount. I can't see any store owner really taking advantage of that because of how small those neighborhoods are, but we want to respect how historically there had been a store there, and if in the future the camp wanted to have a small store within, it would be outright permissible.
Okay, I don't have a problem with it. I just wasn't sure if we're picturing haircutting salons and nail things or whatever it is,
Just a general retail store.
Mostly a general store?
A general retail store, generally.
Okay.
Council members, any other additional questions? Councilmember Kaneshiro?
I had a question on the Zone 0, the hardening around the buildings. I know you mentioned the cost for like, like the screening and stuff is like $2,000 to $3,000, but the hardening around the buildings, what type of cost does that cover?
It depends on the size of the house, of course, right? But when you're looking at, say, 1,000 square foot structure, it's coming in around roughly a $10,000 to $12,000 ask.
And is I know it says concrete or commensurate with concrete, but is there anything cheaper they could use besides concrete around the house?
If that's how we've got commensurate, if they can find something. The issue with using, so we discussed it with Elizabeth, and I'm sure if you guys want to chime in, the notion of using, say, gravel. Because let's do gravel. And at least our understanding is that gravel is good for the first year or so, but it becomes a significant vulnerability because things begin to eventually grow there, and then leaves eventually get trapped there, and it's harder to clean than other areas. But I don't know if you...
Sorry, Elizabeth, do you mind pressing your...
For a long time in our Firewise Communities program, we were recommending any kind of hardening. We were saying, river stones, gravel, cinder, pavers, all of those things. And eventually, in between the pavers, we get lots of vegetation. Gravel, you can't rake or blow it. You just blow the gravel and the cinder everywhere. And eventually, all of that stuff, nature likes any kind of substrate where it can get its roots in. And so, and then dead leaves blowing around crumble up, and then all of a sudden you just can't get that embedded leaf material out of the cinder or the gravel. So we've tried everything we could think of so far. Not that we've thought of everything, but it's a really hard situation to solve, and that 0 to 5 feet is what basically led to houses burning or not. And so it's the most important zone, and then it's also complicated. So.
Any other questions, Council Member?
In following up, I'm not sure if you said it, but what is the width of the hardening? So the minimum required width or recommended?
5 feet.
5 feet? So a concrete sidewalk, if you will, around the house of 5 feet. Wow.
Any additional questions, Councilmember?
I was just spending a lot of time with Elizabeth's folks, and my understanding of it too is the 5 feet was established scientifically. It was in the laboratories and in the real world results is that in a high wind event, you're going to create an eddy around the house, and the embers will be landing from around within 5 feet, and so anything in there becomes an extreme vulnerability, especially when you still have wooden walls. Right.
Councilmember Cotton?
So, if I was hearing you correctly when you're talking about no tree police, I like that framework. That sounds like soft enforcement on landscaping. When I was reading all the landscaping things, of course it makes me think, and I'm sitting here thinking I need to get a grinder and grind some of my things that have fallen on the ground. But this is a pretty aggressive aggressive landscape restrictions. So, how's that to be enforced? You have to really stay on top of plants a lot to keep. Every time you cut them, they're going to get thicker, right? So, that's going to lay on the landowners to go in and enforce that.
So, like I said, for the existing camps, it's just that they need to work their way towards it. So, just movement in that direction. For the new section of the camps, that's the unbuilt, undeveloped section of the camps. It's a hard and fast. Yeah, you as a landowner need to be responsible to make sure your tenants are maintaining this manner. And essentially, we envision you signing new contracts with people to stay there, and more than likely they're going to scrape the lot before they even build, right? So they'll scrape it generally, and there won't really be any landscaping at the initial onset. So as the new tenants are there, then they're required to keep it in that maintenance. From an enforcement standpoint, this is structured a little bit different than the way regular zoning enforcement mechanisms are set up for the zoning code as a whole. The trigger for enforcement on here is when the complaint is filed by the fire chief or the fire department. And the vision of that is we're not going to take, which sometimes can happen, neighborly complaints like, oh, my neighbor has a mango tree blocking my view. Planning department going for it, like, it has to come from the fire department or the fire chief himself. And from that perspective, it's just when there are consistent and persistent problems in the new area of the camps that are breaching the overall policy, and the fire department folks can't get these guys really up to snuff, that's when the chief would make the complaint with the planning department, and the planning department would go and inspect, and if so, issue the zoning compliance notice.
And there, I should have highlighted it. There's an area in here about an area around the whole camp that needs to be trimmed, right? Like
the 100 feet.
It's 100 feet around the whole camp. So 100 feet isn't actually that much.
No.
So they just have to go through with the big mower and mow a field around it. That should be probably pretty easy to pull off.
And I'll say there's some exempt plants in there, and those are banana, kalo, because they can, something like banana trees can even serve as fire breaks because there's so much water in those plants. But then also any crop that's part of an agricultural operation that's over an acre in size, those because those are being routinely maintained, those are also exempt from the requirements.
Great.
Okay.
Any other additional questions, council members? Thank you guys for your presentation. While the rules are still suspended, we will do testimony. Any online testimony for this? We have one Zoom. So Zoom testifier, we're getting you pulled up in just a moment. Give us a second. All right. Zoom testifier, if you want to unmute and testify, you have 3 minutes for your first testimony, and then we'll go to the rest of the community here that is present to see if anyone is interested in testifying, and then if you are looking to testify, an additional 3 minutes will be available to you. Go ahead.
All right. Good morning. Hi, my name is Mike McFarland. I'm here as a representative of Pacific Birds joint venture. We advocate for wetland restoration in Hawaii, and I wanted to add some information related to the wildland-urban interface. It was mentioned earlier. Wetlands, rivers, and streams run through or are next to many communities in Kauai, including the neighborhoods that are the focus of this bill, and these can provide a natural fire break in the landscape that can slow or stop wildfires before they reach our communities. However, across Kauai, these wetlands and streams are now filled with introduced plant species that are fire prone and contribute to wildfire transmission and intensity. Pakala Village is bordered by a stream and gulch on its west and east sides, and Kaua'i neighborhoods have agricultural ditches around them, which are filled with the fire prone plant Halekoa. This is one of the 3 fire prone species that's listed in this bill. I would advocate for restoring these stream beds and agricultural ditches with native evergreen wetland plants. This would remove the highly fire-prone species and replace them with high moisture content plants that are less combustible and burn slower. This would establish a broader defensible space around the communities. These native river-associated plants have high leaf moisture, produce less leaf litter, and accumulate less dead wood for fuel. Wet or high moisture content plants can also prevent wind-blown embers from igniting or burn slower, which can provide additional time for first responders to reach a wildfire or community. The restoration of these broader areas would help to address the growing threat of wildfires to these communities and address multiple items mentioned in this bill. If you're curious about any of this or would like to contact me, you can reach me at pacificbirds.org. And I'd like to thank you for my time here. Thank you.
I have a clarifying question.
Thank you. Michael, we have a clarifying question from Councilmember Cotton.
Did you send in written testimony?
I did not, but I can.
Could you please do that? And then
Yes.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, so if I'm getting what you're saying is to encourage wetlands around these plantation camps. Is that the essence of what you said? Because it makes it even safer.
That's the essence of what I said. The development, sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but somebody mentioned earlier the banana and kalo that are allowed in this ordinance. Those are high moisture content plants. So are native plants and these native river plants or wetland plants.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Encouraging their growth. Yeah.
And please do send in a written testimony.
Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
Any additional Zoom testimony? With the rules suspended, anyone in the room wishing to testify on this bill? Anyone registered to testify? No? All right. With no testimony, I'll call the meeting to order. Council members, discussion on the bill. Councilmember Cowden?
I want to thank Chief Gibson for sending the council a really good video and a couple articles on effectively managing neighborhoods that I felt really put a lot of context into this. And there was a handful of other ways that can happen to make things work. And so I appreciate Elizabeth and all the work that's gone into this.
Councilman Kaneshiro?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for all the hard work. I think we're definitely on the forefront of this. I haven't heard of any other county when we go to NACO that's looking this much into protecting houses. And so, I think all of the measures were very well thought of. We weren't going to the extreme of saying, let's put a bubble around a house, it'll cost $1 million, but that house won't burn. I think just those small measures around the house. I know the concrete is probably the biggest hurdle, the most expensive hurdle, but at the end of the day, it's probably one of the most important because it's at the foot of your house. So I can understand it, and it might be a hard bullet for people to swallow or a hard pill to swallow when they're building, but at the end of the day, that concrete will most likely save the house if there's a fire. So I understand that. And just want to say, again, thanks for all the hard work. Thanks for thinking it through, coming with reasonable measures. And, I'm happy that we're really looking into this because, we just saw within the last year what a wildfire can do. And, again, I hear a lot about wildfires happening in the mainland when we go up to these conferences, but I don't hear a lot about the measures that individual counties are taking to prevent or make houses more safe. And I think we're definitely on the forefront of that, which I appreciate you guys for doing that.
Council members, any other discussion? Councilmember Holland?
Although I'm not on the voting committee today, I want to weigh in a little bit and just also thank all the hard work that's gone into this measure. I want to also address what the testifier just brought up about large-scale restoration. I think the reality is that post-plantation, our whole island was a plantation with only 2 free association towns 100 years ago. And as that transition happened into modern context of land ownership, certain things have really fallen through the cracks. And one of those things is unmanaged landscapes that have grown up with pioneering species of plants that are highly fire-prone, that didn't exist during a plantation era where the landscape was very well managed, the ditches were well taken care of. There was a totally different system of land management, and I think that this measure is trying to address those fire issues that we now have to deal with because we've radically changed our landscape. And so I do completely agree with what the testifier said, although it's a much larger lift and a much bigger long-term project to restore our wetland systems, to bring back and maintain our ditch systems, to ensure that water is moving where we want it and not where we don't want it, for all kinds of other reasons. I just think that's a really important point to bring up. And this is a measure to help save lives and to keep people safe in the interim. But really, we should be looking at the larger transition of how we better manage our landscape holistically, including those reestablishment of native and less fire-prone species. But I really, I support this measure. I'm not voting today in the committee, but I am very supportive of all the effort that goes in. Obviously, we've seen tragic loss of life. These wooden plantation-style homes and close communities do make it more fire-prone and do increase the risk of loss of life. So, just wanted to share that and thank everyone.
Any other discussion? And I know there's any for amendments that were made.
Okay.
Councilmember Kaua'i.
Yeah, just adding to what Councilmember Howland said, I think I read or saw someplace that one of the landowners with some of the Mauka lands in Lahaina, near Lahaina, Kamehameha School's Bishop Estate is investing in, and with community as well, right? Restoring some of the rainforests and things like that. So outside of this specific, because we're talking about planning and the building and the camps themselves, but the surrounding areas absolutely need to be addressed. And the other thing I wanted to say is mahalo for all of you who came forward and presented today. It was probably the most thorough, in-depth presentation on one bill that I've ever seen. So very, very clear and very easy, and I'm sure the public appreciates it too. Thank you.
Any other discussions, council members? I know there is a housekeeping amendment.
Is someone going?
Oh, sorry. Let me get the count back. You can turn your mic on.
So I move to amend as circulated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It was moved by Councilmember Kaua'i and seconded by Councilmember Cowden. As it shows, the amendment adds new definitions to define the 4 zones. You see it's highlighted. Councilmembers, do you have any questions or discussions
How
on
is this
this amendment?
housekeeping? Looks like pretty substantial. A lot of things are in
I think it's just what's in the highlighted, used for the principal use permitted in, on item 3. It's not all the underlined, just what is in yellow. And on under 4, it puts the word and.
Yeah, so it adds new definitions to define the 4 zones, primary structure zone, zone 0, zone 1, zone 2, and amends the definition of structure, primary, and amends the section C1H.
Yeah, that's all.
Council members,
I just have that question,
do you have a question for our
probably staff,
staff? Okay.
that the change is what's in the yellow highlighting, not just it's not all the underlining.
Yes.
All of the underlining?
Yes.
Okay, well then I gotta read it.
Council members, would you like a recess?
No, not too much, but can
Do you
I
have any
have,
questions?
yeah, can I have Kaina up here, the planning director?
All the rules suspended, Director Hall. Councilmember Cowden.
So, Director Hull, did you create this right here, and can you just tell us quickly what, it's changing the zone 0, zone 1, zone 2 for the defensible spaces? I mean, can you just explain why this got added?
Yeah, we just felt it really truly just a housekeeping measure that we had zone 0, zone 1, zone 2 already in the draft ordinance, but we realized we didn't formally define them. And so we just want a formal definition in there so that we're clear about what areas we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Director Hall, council members? Let me call the meeting back to order. Any questions, discussion for the amendment? No discussion, no questions. Seeing none, I'd like to call a roll call vote for the amendment. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Back to the main motion
Well, we need a new main motion.
with the amended.
Move to approve as amended.
No.
The original motion was just move to
Second.
approve.
Yes. Any other discussion on the amended bill? No discussion? Roll call vote.
This is a roll call on a motion to recommend approval of Bill Number 2961 as amended. Council members Carvalho,
Aye.
Cowden,
Aye.
Kanashiro,
Aye.
Kaua'i,
Aye.
Committee Chair Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes as amended.
Can I get the next bill, Bill number 2962, please?
Bill number 2962, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 3, Kauai County Code 1987, as amended, relating to the West Kauai Community Plan Implementing Ordinance 2020, County of Kauai Planning Department, applicant ZA-2025-4, Numila, West Kauai Community Plan Amendment.
I'd like to suspend the
Move to
rules.
approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'd like to suspend the rules. We'll have, again, council members will do planning with their presentation, then questions, then testimony, then discussion. If there is any floor amendments, they'll be done during discussion. Director Hall?
Okay, so thank you again, Chair, members of the council. Kaua'i Hall, on behalf of the planning department. I'm joined here with Shalea Koga, who is the chief planner one of the chief planners on the overall form-based code project. So going back to my original comments about us looking at allowing the camps to evolve, we had done Kaua'i Avenue and Kaua'i Camp previously, and council reviewed and took action on those. So we're coming back to give the same treatment to the two remaining camps, Numila and Kaua'i. If it's okay with you, Shalea's, because they all interact with each other, I apologize that you guys have 8 more bills to review, but in the way that the zoning ordinance works, the general plan works, and the state land use urban district works, they all have to ride kind of interrelated with each other. But ultimately, I thought it'd be best to have Shalea just give a overall presentation on what the camp codes are being proposed and how they interact with each other. And then it should be the kind of presentation for all the bills, if you will, in the beginning, and then we can get into the meat and potatoes individually with you folks.
That's fine. Yes, you press the presentation.
Push the button.
All right, good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to be going over the 2 areas where we are proposing the form-based code. Sorry. So I'm going to be going over the 2 areas that we're going over to put the form-based code over. And the 2 areas are Numila and Kaua'i, which you can see on the screen. So Numila is going to be the existing portion that is there today of the plantation camps. And then in Kaua'i, we are putting the form-based code over a 14.9 acre adjacent parcel. So I wanted to give a little background to begin, and kind of touched on this a little bit previously when he talked about the WUI. But there is a West Kauai community plan which really guides the growth of the West Kauai community. And you folks heard that plan back in 2020. And in that plan, it identified the plantation camp areas as significant areas and stated there's a clear need to protect and preserve these historical structures while accommodating future uses compatible with those that have historically occurred at these camps for over a century. And so there's a few plantation camps that were identified in this, and that was Numila, Pakala, Kaua'i Avenue, Kaua'i Village. And so a few years ago in 2022, you folks have heard, we came to you with the plantation camp form-based code for the Kaua'i Avenue and Kaua'i Village area. And some other form-based codes that we have also done has been on the South Kauai, called the South Kauai Form-Based Code, and then in West Kauai, which is the West Kauai Form-Based Code, and it covers, on South Kauai it covers a portion of Koloa, and on the West Kauai it covers a portion of Kekaha, Hanapepe, and Waimea Town. Okay. So what is form-based code? So form-based code is a code that prioritizes a form and character standpoint of a structure over the internal use, where we're really used to hearing what zoning we have on Kauai today is more of a Euclidean zoning, and Euclidean zoning focuses on the separation of uses where you have commercial in one area, residential in one area, and it never mixes, where form-based code more focuses on what the building looks like, what is the form and character that really keeps that place special in that area and that community. So here we are today, and we're looking at proposing a form-based code over both Numila and Kaua'i camps to perpetuate those specific camp characteristics. And in order to do so, we have to change multiple layers of zoning, and therefore you have bills before you that propose to amend the general plan, the state land use district, and the West Kauai community plan. And so in Numila, and you folks will have an amendment later on that we can talk about. Originally, we were proposing to amend the West Kauai Community Plan, the General Plan, and the State Land Use District. And that was when we were also proposing a 14.9 acre expansion parcel as well as the existing Numila Camp area. But part of the amendment, we are asking for the 14.9 acre parcel that wasn't new, it was just going to be the expansion to be removed. Therefore, we don't need Bill 2963 and 2964. So the only bill moving forward with this will be Bill 2962, which is to add special planning area P, known as Numila Plantation Camp Walkable Mixed Use District. For Ka'awanui, we have 3 bills moving forward. That's Bill number 2965, which is to amend the West Kauai Community Plan to put special planning area Q, which will also be known as Ka'awanui Plantation Camp Walkable Mixed Use District. We will be amending the general plan designation from agriculture to plantation camp, and then we will be amending the state land use district from agriculture to urban, and that's in that 14.9 acre adjacent area that's adjacent to the existing Ka'awanui plantation camp that you can see on the top right-hand corner. All right. So before you can see here that when we're coming up with the form-based codes in these areas, we really look at how the area interacts, what building types is in those specific areas, and what building types we're going to allow. So we came up for Numila, we have 2 transects, and in those transects, in T3N, we allow the Numila cottage, and in T3NL, we have 2 building types allowed, which is Luna Cottage 1 and Luna Cottage 2. And in the next slides, I'll be showing you the types of building types that they are and the sizing that they are. Okay, and then for Ka'awanui, we have only 1 transect, but we allow more building types in that. Okay, so to really give background on how we came up with this code is we really, a whole planning team went out to these individual camps as Numila and in Ka'awanui, and we literally measured every single building that was out there, from the height to the roof pitches to the lanai frontages, the setbacks, how wide the roads are, and we really wanted to capture every single thing that makes these buildings so special to these historic plantation camps. And you can see in the top left corner, that house up there has vents, and so we really wanted to make sure like that was a key requirement that we implement in the new code. And we formulated our draft codes, our draft form-based codes off of these existing building types that were there today. And so if you look at the top left picture, that is an original house that was still standing there today, which we got to take pictures of and measure in Numila. And on the right side, you can see from our code regulations that we have come up with, it would replicate almost the exact same thing. And so these are the 3 building types that are allowed in the Numila existing plantation camp if they were to rebuild, and that is Numila Cottage, Luna Cottage 1, and Luna Cottage 2. So they range from around 1,000 square feet to a maximum of 2,000 square feet. And we really wanted to make sure that these building types would be allowed there, and no other, you couldn't just go and build like a brand new modern looking house, something that wouldn't be really compatible to this area. And so for Kaua'i, we did the same thing. We went out to the camps, we measured, we took their special characteristics and formulated it into a code. These 2 codes, or all of the form-based codes that we create, we wanted to make sure that they were tailored to each respective camp. And so Numila building types and frontages all will be specific for Numila camp. And Kaua'i will all be specific to Kaua'i camp. So you really won't see a mix of Numila's houses being allowed in the Kaua'i zone. And we really wanted to capture what was there existing and really perpetuate that for future. And so in the Kaua'i building types, we allow a little bit more building types since the Kaua'i area is a 14.9 acre expansion to the existing camp that is there today. So there is room for growth. And so these 2 cottages, Kaua'i horizontal cottage and Kaua'i vertical cottage, ranges from 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. And those are traditional houses that we see there today and at the camps. We also have allowed more building types in the expansion areas so that they can grow in the future and have a little bit more building types that are allowed. So here we have duplex, multiplex small, dormitory, and these are a little bigger than the traditional houses that are allowed, but they will also allow more occupants to be inside one building. So for the duplex, you could have 2 families in there. For a multiplex small, you can have up to 4 to 6 families in those units. And then a dormitory, which we didn't just create ourselves. This is actually the dormitory that was historically used in the Kamakani Avenue area. And so that's what we took this code, what we based our code off of was that dormitory type. And so these square footages are a little bit bigger, from 2,500 to 3,800 square feet. And then another important characteristic of the frontage types that really capture the historical look and feel of those camps and how they interact with the streets is their frontages. And so in Numila, which is on the left, you can see that the frontage types are a little bit bigger. And then on the Kaua'i side, the frontage types are a little bit smaller. And so, as I was saying earlier, the codes are really tailored to what was existing today and how do we perpetuate that historical character and feel for future. All right, so that basically wraps up the form-based code. Ka'aina and I will be happy to answer any questions on that, and you folks will see other amendments as well that we are requesting as part of that, and we can go over that as well when those come up.
Thank you for the presentation. Council members, I know this will be if we can, just try to stay on the bill that is presented to us. I guess question to our committee real quick as we have our presenters here. Do we want to do the floor amendment to just build them all together so we can have the full discussion? Since they already recommended that they will most likely, it'll be easier for us to have the discussion.
I would say if the floor amendment's coming from them and it's a housekeeping item, we should look at the floor amendment too early.
Okay. Well, let me call the meeting back to order. Is there someone want to make the recommendation or make the request?
Okay.
Councilmember Carvalho. Mike, please.
Move to
Amend is circulated.
amend this as circulated.
It's been moved and seconded. Council members, please review. As mentioned in the presentation, this is now moving basically bill number 2963 and 2964 into 2962. And I'll let our Director Hall and team explain furthermore.
Thank you, Chair. So this is for specifically bill number 2962, Numila West Kauai Community Plan Amendment. There was at the Planning Commission hearing and action, there was a proposed amendment that was adopted by the Commission to be recommended to you folks concerning 30% of the units to be made available for first priority to agricultural workers on the property. Recognizing that Numila Camp actually already has plantation camp zoning and wasn't part of Bill 2968, in order to make sure it applied to Numila, and this is kind of a housekeeping because that was the intent of the Commission, the 30% language is being proposed specifically to be included in the Numila Camp ordinance now.
Question, Councilmember Cowden?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you for this. So when we have this minimum 30% of the dwelling units, is there a certain amount that is set aside for Kauai coffee and also for kukui ula? You know, because those are both organizations have a high need for housing, so they probably could consume the whole housing, really. Is there, does it separate that out in any way? Is there a plan?
Legally, my understanding is you can't name a specific company that the housing is dedicated for. The 30% for ag workers of an ag operation on the subject property is the way it's called out. But essentially for like Numila, that would be the Kauai coffee folks. For Avanui, that could be like Balloon Farms might be on the parcel, there might be ranchers on the parcel. So it's just, has to give to list the agricultural workers of an agricultural operation on the property. And that's essentially that call out. What the plantation camp owners do with the other 70% is kind of, it's up to them.
Okay.
Any additional questions, council members?
Yeah.
Councilmember Kweli.
Kaina, so you're saying this recommendation is coming from the Planning Commission, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
it was, the Planning Commission recommended it, but the way they took action on it was just in the map, Bill 2968, which was the map, and technically it was just adjusting where there isn't plantation camp zoning right now. And we realized, oh wait, if they wanted to apply it to Numila is not actually part of Bill 2968. So it needs to be in the actual Chapter 10 for Numila.
Yeah, but the idea that 30% be given of the dwelling units for affordable first priority to agricultural workers. So how did planning come up with 30% and not 50%? Or seeing that it's not a ultimate requirement, it's just a for first priority, and then ultimately it goes beyond that, right?
There were some discussions with the county attorney at that time, and she was saying, I'm not making a formal opinion, but she did have some concerns at that time. There was a 50% number thrown out there, and the county attorney, looking at it in that brief moment of time, said 50% may be a concern, and so the commission took action on 30%. Now, I'll leave it at that.
Any additional questions, Chair Raposo?
I have a question, and
Mike, please.
we talked about this yesterday, kind of. The county code also provides for contiguous properties that are owned by the same landowner would also be covered by this. They would be allowed to participate in this plantation camp project, right?
Yeah, and we had originally had language, I think, that we were sending over to include contiguous parcels, and that the county attorney flagged was, well, that's a problem, because in theory, if you have a contiguous parcel that isn't owned by the landowner and is run by another farm operation, it would require the landowners to open the housing up to them. So we were like, okay, we take away the contiguous, but for the definition of parcel in the Kauai County Code, it is a lot of record or two or more contiguous lots of record under common ownership. So if you're talking about the Kauai Coffee example, Kauai Coffee, as long as they're the farm operation, even though there are lots adjacent to what this bill is applying to, it can apply to them as well.
Thank you.
Any other additional questions? Councilmember Cowden?
So, Kauai Coffee did send in a letter, and I had asked you earlier if you guys worked together, and you said yes. So, are the issues in here addressed? It seems like they want up to 50%. But aside from that, is the location of where it's going to be, it's not going to be right on top of something already under cultivation?
Yeah, so that's technically bill number 2963, the next bill, and in that one we're recommending to remove it out.
Okay.
I'll get into more when we
So you're
get to that
recommending
bill.
to take 2963 out?
When we get to bill 2963, we're recommending the 14.9 acres be removed.
Okay.
The newly proposed 14.9 acres that's over, so not developed but over existing coffee fields, we're recommending that be removed.
So my next question, you can tell me if we pass this and then we can talk the next, I mean, I understand that this is just an amendment, but when we're seeing the dormitory housing, we're seeing the exterior of the building, we don't see the interior. So I don't know what the bed count is. I know in both properties, there are leases that bring in typically migrant workers for a certain season of the time. And I don't know how long those migrant workers are there, but that's different than a long-term tenant. So I don't see a bed count or anything like that. Is any of that determined, and have we looked to see if the bed count is appropriate for the needs of the tenants on these properties?
Currently in the code, no, there isn't. We would just be relying on other building standards when they get building permits that they meet the size requirements for the rooms. We recognizing that there is a debate too about whether or not we should call these single-man homes, right? In the past, they were single-man homes. Settle on dormitory because there might be women in there now. Anyways, there's a historical use that is in the camps. They still actually have one of the dormitory buildings, not being used for dormitory purposes right now, but just reflecting that it happened in the past, and these were a land use that you could use. That's why it was proposed. But currently, as drafted, there's no bed count.
Any other questions, council members?
I do have one, but
Councilmember Cowden, go ahead.
Can I have mine?
Yep, go ahead.
So when you're working with the landowners, are you working with the leaseholders also, or is that just the landowners?
You can work with the leaseholder when authorized by the landowner.
So have you guys worked with the leaseholders? Were you authorized by the landowners? In terms of, I'm just trying to look at, like, are we addressing the need? Like, is there going to be enough in here for what's needed? That's what I'm asking.
There are other parts of the various properties that are also being looked at outside of the camps for dormitory proposals.
Okay.
Any other additional questions,
I
council
wasn't
members?
done.
Oh, you have
So-
other council members with questions.
Okay.
Is this a follow-up to your discussion question, this last question that you have?
I'm just going to ask one more time just so I'm clear. We're going to go to these next ones, and we're going to probably drop 2963 and 2964. So with those droppings of that, have we largely addressed this? I see the 50% that didn't get addressed, but have we largely addressed this before I move?
I believe so.
Okay.
Councilmember Holland?
Thank you, guys. I have a couple of questions. So I just want to be clear. With you can't do the adjacent properties. So if they work, I'm just a little concerned. I'm going to set the stage of what I'm trying to ask. If we're talking about agricultural, like supporting agricultural workers and having that kind of workforce housing for those kind of purposes, What if the adjacent property, for whatever reason, reduces its agriculture and it can't meet that 30% need for that? So it can't be broader, like if you work in agriculture in that moku, or if you work in agriculture.
Yeah, so it's essentially a first right of refusal. So it's a proposal where government is imposing a restriction on who you first open this up to. It says you are restricted and required for any housing that 30%. You're required to give first right of refusal to 30% of farm workers operating on your parcel. And then after that, it can be opened up.
So we can't limit it beyond that parcel. Like you couldn't say that 30% has to be offered to agricultural workers on the west side, or.
And it's unfolding as I'm learning what we legally can and can't do. When the 30% and the 50% came up, I think the concern was like, oh, you can't do that legally because there's going to be an income restriction. And then this whole discussion has entered now into the, well, if you're offering it at free market, there may be the legal ability to say, yeah, you got to prioritize these particular sets of workers insofar as it's offered at the free market. And I know we're getting into an area where I know Matt is probably going to be able to articulate a bit better than I.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have a proposed amendment that's going to address that. I'm not on a committee. Mr. Cooley will be introducing that in a little while. But yeah, we're hoping to address that.
Any other additional questions, Councilmember Kaneshiro?
Yeah, I was going to ask this later, but I figure while it's here, how does this 30% work again? Like, you offer it, say the ag guys don't fill 30%, so you fill it with someone else.
Yep.
Then, if someone moves out, then you got to offer it to a.
Yeah, so the way we envision it being implemented essentially is, if you have, and this is for new construction, right? We can't necessarily require it on the older homes, but for new construction, if say GNR built 10 homes in the new section Kaua'i, three of those homes need to be offered to agricultural workers first, and then let's say the 7 get filled up by they have this long tenant request list, right? So they fill it up with locals, but not necessarily people working in their operations. They offer the 3 to farm workers on their land, and if it's taken, right, they've met that. If it's not taken, and they fill all 10 with non-farmers, at least the way we read it is, insofar as whenever there is a vacancy, if there is not 30% currently occupied by farm workers, they always have to make that vacancy available first to the farm worker, and then if no farm worker takes it, then they can fill it. But insofar as there's never, so if you had, say, 2 of the 10 homes up, you've got 2 farm families living in them, and you have 8 homes, non-farm families, and let's say 2 now homes are vacated. They're required to meet 30%, so they offer one of those homes as first priority to a farm worker, but the 4th home they don't have to automatically offer to the farm worker. That's how we envision this being implemented, but
it's kind of confusing to try and think, like, how long do you have to offer it, like, before you say, like, oh, there's nobody willing to take the unit, so now we're just going to rent it to whoever wants it. Like, I don't, like.
Under the draft proposal, they just have to make that offer to the farm operations on their camps. Within their lands.
I mean, I think it would be hard because right now, say they build the units today and they're all ready. For the most part, every worker now is renting somewhere or in a house somewhere.
Yeah.
So, like, how much time do they have to say, oh, I don't want to be where I'm at. I want to be in this new house or new rental. Like, is there no time period? Or I feel like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think my way through how this thing is going to work. Like,
yeah.
how long would a landowner have to keep it available, you know, and be like, we offered it, 30 days, but 30 days would be hard, I would think, for a worker that's already living somewhere to say, like, oh, I'm going to up and try and move there. Or even if the units are getting built and they know when it's going to be completed, I would think it would still be hard because someone might be in a certain contract. I think the only people that could move on it would be people living with their parents or whatever, that could move on it, but anybody else would be obligated elsewhere. So I don't know.
Yeah, that hasn't been specifically ironed out, and then there's been an implementation aspect of it. Whether or not they're using actual formal right of first refusal as when they, because technically, right, these operations that they have to offer to are their own tenants, right? It's tenants on their land operating it. So they've got contracts with these tenants already, the farm tenants. So they could, in theory, establish a process where right of first refusal is set so that they can meet these requirements.
Council members, any additional questions? Councilmember Cowden?
New Milla, looks to me like most of those houses were removed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are any of them left standing?
I believe 2, maybe 3.
Because I know there was a certain amount of like brownfill or toxicity and all that's been cleaned up.
That I'm not aware of.
Okay. And then, so as New Milla rebuilds, and by the way, I support the rebuilding of New Milla and the cleanup of the spot. So pretty much all of New Milla is going to be new.
Correct.
New Mill will be new because it's been removed, unlike the other
Correct.
camps that we're looking at.
Any other questions? Councilmember Sanashiro?
Not trying to throw it. No, so regarding this 30% and priority, does anyone else do it like around the country? Just so we have an example of how it would like work, or are we like the first ones trying to do it? I understand the intent. The intent is to get workers that are on the field there in a house near where they work. It's also, I think the intent is, I mean, we hear it out in the community that we can't find workers because we can't find housing. So I understand the intent, but I'm just trying to think of like how it is actually going to work, you know, and hopefully it works and accomplishes the intended result, which is you get workers that are living in a house right next to the property they're working on. But I'm just like trying to think it through on how that actually happens without, you know, having like a long lag time. And then, I don't know, maybe the guys that develop the houses are like, how long do we keep this thing open and vacant? You know, we might have other people that are looking for a house.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the priority initially is for the ag workers there. But then at the bigger picture at the whole plantation camp is to create more housing for the island. So like, how do we maneuver through that, I guess, is
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. Like, plantation camps existed because they're ag worker housing, right? The plantation camps that exist today have evolved to be local housing inventory for ag workers and non-ag workers. The 30%, you know, I think some of the original discussion and I think legal analysis was going to the housing requirements can be 30% without being a takings, and there's some nexus in there, but this isn't actually a housing requirement with lower income thresholds like the housing exaction has been set up. This is a free market housing requirement. So I'm not aware of anything like that similarly, but it could be out there.
Councilmember Khan?
Okay, I have a follow-up, and if it's helpful to have Matt go up there, I'm totally happy to. Do you want to go
ahead.
first? I want to talk about the other 70% for a moment. I know, for example, for New Milla, Kaua'i desperately needs housing for their property that, you know, maybe isn't ag, but it is still part of their whole larger land, right? So some of those people are probably paid well enough that they can handle market rate. Is there any limitations on the other 70%, or is it just, can people rent it from the continental United States or somewhere else that has no affiliation with the landowner's objectives? It's just up for anything. I know we need
The
all
other
kinds of
70%,
housing.
right? Yeah, it really is, as drafted, it's up to the landowner to do what they want with it. We always have concerns about upzoning and allowing additional development. Candidly, there was some concerns about doing that in coastal areas, especially when you upzone coastal areas, right? That often ends up in the speculative market and being used by people who don't live here for 2 or 3 weeks out of the year, and they gobble up the inventory. So that's why we're hesitant. We absolutely enjoy working with GNR and watch what they do with local inventory and providing local housing in Pacalas, but that's kind of like, we're concerned about the potential speculative. And looking to other campuses, their location, as well as the size restriction in the house, it's a house by design and by location. really probably not, this should not end up on the speculative market. But there's only so much controls we can put. So beyond those controls at 30%, which seems to be the limit, by design and by environment, this we anticipate not being in speculative development. You know, in talks with the owners of Numila Camp, to your point, I think there was some desire to look at housing their employees there.
Yeah.
Any additional questions, council members?
I have a question. Why did we choose the term plantation camp when we started to do these form-based codes? What caused us to call these developments plantation camps?
Historically, they're part of the plantations.
It's a what?
Historically, they're part of the plantations.
Right. But we are evolving into an area that it's not a plantation camp.
Correct.
That is where my concern lies. Anyway, I'll have, Mr. Chair, I'll have some comments prior to me introducing my amendment, which hopefully will resolve some of these issues. But I wanted to, if you allow me, when we come back to order, an opportunity to share some context as to why I believe we need to really look at this.
Can do. Councilmember Kaua'i.
So kind of bottom line is we should think of this as a 30% minimum requirement for the first right of refusal for the offering, right?
Yep.
To the agricultural workers.
Correct.
Now, when they do that, in the process of doing that right up front, if they get an overwhelming response of 40 or 50%, I would think they have an easier chance of filling their units, and they're still going to get the same amount of rental monies, and it's still for the same type of housing. I think, by the way, these houses are limited in their design to replicate what was there before as plantation houses. They're not the kind of houses necessarily that will attract the rich people living on the North Shore, if you will, in mansions, right? So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have that worry, but the hope is, and maybe somehow at some point when the development project happens, it's affordable in nature, and maybe housing is involved somehow as a partner, and maybe that actually even encourages to get beyond that 30%. But I think the part about the type of housing plays a big role. The limitation on the type of housing plays a big role in this also, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We got our
Councilmember Kaua'i.
Just clarify question. So the actual housing, just clarify, the operation of the subject parcel area, I mean, they're working, that's the big requirement right there?
Yep.
It has to be that.
It has to be the subject parcel. I know Kaua'i submitted testimony that like, oh, we're on other parcels next to that parcel. And what I was kind of explaining earlier to the chair's question is, as long as it's under contiguous ownership, those adjacent parcels still qualify for the housing requirement.
Just one clarification.
Any other additional questions, council members? Thank you. Thank you for Kainan team. We are on the floor amendment still, so I'll call the meeting back to order. Any additional discussion on the current floor amendment? The floor amendment does have, as review, it did 30%, and Exhibit N, B being replaced, and Exhibit C.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Councilman Holland, discussion.
Thank you, Chair. So, for me, I just want to be clear that, you know, a lot's changed since our whole island was a plantation, and we're struggling really greatly with worker housing across the board. And, you know, the common term, hotel is a new plantation, is not far off. We have a major housing crisis for those working in hospitality. We have a major housing crisis that's, you know, seeing people have to leave. I personally, the purpose of these camps have always been worker housing for, at the time, plantation. But the reality is, I mean, I think that they should be entirely worker housing. I feel very strongly that these houses should remain within, you know, affordable workforce housing and should be there for the purpose. You know, to be honest, I also feel like, and maybe it's a little bit personal, but Kavanui and Numila, Numila particularly, I would like to see those families that were displaced. Auntie Ruby Rivera, the last to leave that camp, and they're about to demolish Uncle Lincoln's house of 50 years. The family is pretty distraught about it. I would really like to see those families offered back into those homes, those generational plantation families that were promised to live out their life there. Auntie's miserable on the continent. It's been about 3 years, I think, and I just am concerned that if we do not keep the purpose of what these plantation homes were and the workforce and those generational families being respected first, that we could see this just be a great gift to these landowners to make a bunch of money off of housing that really the predominant purpose should be to keep our local community here.
Any other discussion on the floor amendments, councilmember proposals, Cowden and Quillen?
Yeah, it's actually some context because it does affect this amendment. Mr. Kaneshiro asked the questions. I mean, yours were spot on, and your questions are not answered by this amendment or anything. I think Ms. Collins' comments are spot on as well. But we're not able to require them to do all work for us or all affordable. I mean, that's just something we cannot do. Not that I know of, but I want to just take a step back and take the companies out of it. Don't think of A and B or GNR or whoever. Just take the names out. Don't talk about Kauai Coffee. We are being asked to change zoning from agriculture, which we have all vowed to protect and preserve, to what is now being called plantation camp, which is a somewhat new designation. The West Kauai Community Plan of 2020 made it very clear. West Kauai Community made it very clear they wanted to retain or protect and preserve the plantation camp style. And whether you like it or not, I still hear people say we got to get rid of the plantation mentality. I disagree. I think most of us here are products of plantation camps. But they are part of our history. While we don't have plantations now, we have ag operations out there. And while I don't agree that we should be expanding this to hotel workers, because if you go back to the plantation camps, they never had hotel workers in the plantation camps. They had plantation workers. We have ag operations. And if we want to increase ag operations, we got to provide ag housing. If you look at plantation camp, and I looked it up, it says historic settlement or living area typically associated with a large agricultural plantation, often found in rural areas, especially those with a history of sugarcane or pineapple cultivation. So we don't have sugarcane and pineapple anymore, but we do have crops out there. Again, this bill is, we are debating a bill that's going to convert ag to plantation camp, but is this really a plantation camp? If we have a 30% requirement, what that is, and again, without the mechanics, and I would say that we better put some work in this bill so that those mechanics are identified. I have an amendment that we'll probably introduce after the captioning break because I got to chat with the attorney a little bit. But right here, there is a possibility that no ag workers are in that development, right? There's no restriction on rent. They can come out and say, hey, it's $3,500 a month, $4,000 a month. And Kipukai, well, I can appreciate what you said about this style of this house wouldn't bring in the kinds of, we don't know that. If this development is designed in a way that's attractive and it's beautiful, you could ask for top dollar. And if they offered it to the plantation, to the ag farms, and the rents are too high, then there's no ag workers in that development. So we need to really, really think about if the motive or the motivation for this bill is to protect and preserve the plantation camps, then we really got to take the time and go through this and figure out how are we going to assure that. I do have an amendment, like I said, I'll introduce. I had some feedback this morning from the attorney that it might have to be reworked, so I'll get with them on a caption break. But I just wanted to take a step back, and this is not a plantation camp, but we're calling it that. See, remember, this is an upzoning from ag to what could be residential or mixed use or whatever anybody wants to call it, this is simply not a plantation camp. It's not a plantation camp. So I kind of struggle with that. There is a way we can reach our objectives of putting ag farmers in here, and I believe, after hearing, especially after hearing Mr. Kanashiro's questions, that needs to be in the bill, not an assumption, because we'll never see our farmers in the homes. Thank you.
Councilmember Cowden?
I want to speak to a little bit about when we decided to do this plantation camp overlay. And part of what came up there is just what benefits had happened over, almost a century of people living in the plantation camps, how they took care of each other's children, how they took care of the kupuna. I want to just acknowledge Gay and Robinson, and actually A&B. It's no longer A&B, it's Brubicol Capital Partners. But what we saw when we had that is that an incredible amount of care was given to people post-retirement. There are people who have died, and there are kids who really didn't ever work for the camp, are still living in these properties. It's been a pretty nurturing environment. There's many pieces that are good, and that's why I don't really have a problem if there's a little store in there or something like that. There's a lot of elements. So I think when we were calling it Plantation Camp, and Councilmember Kanashiro was in at the same time, so was Kaua'i, but we were discussing having that more narrow, less sidewalked, smaller roads. It created like a larger ohana and a family way of living, and I think that, in those existing camps, while they're not working sugar right now, they still do care for one another and have a legacy, that has gone for generations. And I just do want to give a shout out to Gay and Robinson, that they seemingly have really taken care of their people over time. But we do have to remember that this is something that will be still there 30 years from now, and different elements. And I know when Brubicol first made the purchase, they didn't have they didn't have New Millicamp, but they really were struggling to find places for people to live, and that made it hard to hire people. And so that's what happened. That's why we did it, but New Milla wasn't in there at the time.
Any other discussion, Councilmember Cooley?
Yeah, speaking on the amendment that is before us, I am supporting this. It may not be everything we want, but it's moving us in the right direction. Establishing the 30% is establishing something. Without that, you have zero.
Any more discussion on the amendment? Councilmember
I'll just say, if it comes to the amendment, I'm willing to vote for it. It's consistent with the rest of the bills we have. So, I'm okay with it.
Any other discussion?
On the amendment.
Councilmember on the amendment. Seeing none, we can do. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. The four amendment passed. Now we're back to the main bill as amended.
Mr. Chair, can we take our caption break now?
Considering the time that we are in, it's 10:11. I'm going to do a caption break for 10 minutes. Then we'll come back into discussion, and if there's any floor amendments then. All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order for the Planning Committee. Just to review where we passed the amendment and we had discussion, and now we do have a new floor amendment.
Move to amend as circulated.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Let me get that passed out to everyone for review. This is moved by Vice Chair Kaua'i by request of...
Yeah, I made this motion on behalf of Chair Raposa, so I'll let him tell you about it. And I can join him.
Chair?
Thank you. Yeah, it's, again, I'm a non-committee member, but this, it goes along what I said earlier about the purpose of a plantation camp and what the community, the West Kauai community shared back in 2020 when they did the community plan, was they wanted to protect and preserve. And, I just don't think it's fair for the West Kauai community to have supported these types of designations as plantation camps, but at the end of the day, these may not be plantation camps. These may be just new residential areas that have minimal or maybe even no agriculture workers on there. So this amendment basically puts in a requirement that will be focused on ag workers. It'll be targeting ag workers. What it doesn't do, it doesn't set any rent requirements. It doesn't require it to be affordable. That is concerning to me as well, but that's not an opportunity we have today. But it does require a very aggressive effort to fill those units with ag workers from the area. And again, these are ag workers that are on the parcel, and with our county code, includes contiguous parcels that are owned by the same landowner. And it requires a wait list, or basically all ag workers will have an opportunity to lease these properties, these homes. A wait list would be created and maintained of agriculture workers who are employed on site, those that are eligible for these houses. And they will be, the 30% was arbitrary, I thought. It was just 30%. There's no rationale, no nexus. I think it's legally challengeable because someone picked 30% because they thought 50% was too high. But it's not a legal nexus. That's just someone's felt, okay, 50 might be too high, so let's go 30. How do we defend that? Well, in this amendment, it is specifically targeting agricultural workers, and they will be given an opportunity to lease these homes. And whenever a dwelling becomes available, if someone moves or no longer has the house, then you can just go back to the list and you find another ag worker that is eligible and willing to take over the house. And if there are no ag workers available, if there are no eligible ag workers that are interested or able, then that house can go out to the market. It's aggressive, but if we want to call this plantation camps, then that's what the people wanted, then that's what we should give them, because I can see how this can easily turn into a mechanism for, and again, take the personalities out of it, take the landowners out of it, because we're not doing this just for these parcels. We're setting a precedent that could be used all over the island, and creating these little mini subdivisions under the term plantation camp, but actually not having any plantation or any agriculture workers living in there. And that is, I do not believe, in fact, I'm almost positive that the West Kauai community in 2020 would not agree with that either. So that's the amendment.
And then, Chair, the only other thing I would add is, when they did the presentation on what form-based codes is, and they talked about what the buildings look like, and that they're trying to keep it to that special type, if you will. Again, back to what plantation camps are, right? So based on that, and based on the types and what they've shown us, right? The Numila Cottage, 1,000 square feet. The Luna Cottage 1, max, 1,440 square feet. The Luna Cottage 2, 2,000. I mean, there, just in the name itself, right? It tells you that in the old days, the plantation camps had maybe the tiny house for the lowest paid ag worker, and then you had the big house for the Luna, the supervisor. So I'm not necessarily concerned about not having the income requirement, because I think, again, back to the house types, it'll work itself out. And we, of course, would have ag workers from all different levels. So maybe this is not the end-all be-all, but I think this amendment is an improvement and gets us maybe closer to where we want to go.
Thank you. I'm going to suspend the rules and ask admin to come up and share any perspective on this floor amendment. Director Hall.
I think again, Chair. We're open to the idea. We would like to see what the landowners, how they would look at folding this into operations. So, we'd like to see how they'd fold on into the operations. But it's slightly different from the one we were reviewing yesterday. Which I was thinking, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to take a position.
And I apologize for that.
No.
After further legal review,
Yep.
There were some legal issues with that amendment yesterday, so I also just saw these this morning.
So I need some time to digest, but we're definitely open to the idea.
Thank you, Director Hall. With the rules suspended, I'll call the meeting back to order. We'll do discussion.
I have a question.
Oh, question for Director Hall.
Yeah.
Suspend the rules on the sheet.
Okay, so I'm trying to, I guess, step a little bit back on this, because I do understand Council Chair Raposo's comment about having a new development. So like when we sat on the West Kauai, when we approved the West Kauai plan and we had the plantation housing designation, I was comfortable with it because it was on an area that already had plantation houses. So it's not like they're going off creating new development. They're rebuilding houses in an area that already had houses, which I thought was a good thing based on, the need for housing on Kauai and the type of houses they had and how old they were, getting a newer house there. Now in retrospect, thinking back, where we're adding a new area of development, like on the GNR property, it's next to the plantation camp and not necessarily encompassing the plantation camp. It's a little different from our thinking when we originally, I always thought all of our plantation camp designations would be layered over an existing plantation camp. So in this new situation, would they be subject to affordable housing, or is a form-based code, because it's a form-based code, then there's no affordable housing requirement, county affordable housing requirement on it?
I believe the specific exemptions in the affordable housing code, I can recheck with Adam folks, but I believe the exemptions are specifically carved out for special planning areas. These are not carved out for a special planning area, so I believe the affordable housing requirements under the housing agency will still apply to these new camps.
Okay, so with the language we're doing to here, they would be subject to the county affordable housing requirement and this additional 30% ag requirement, and then somehow try to drive. I like this amendment in the sense that it sets up this, like, how do we do it, right? Like, in Council Chair's case, it's everything is going to be available for ag workers, and you go through a waiting list, which is kind of like, I don't know how we're doing it. It makes it a little bit more clear, but now I'm thinking, I never thought about this new parcel and being subject to the workforce housing requirement, and then we're adding this other layer, which is kind of confusing on it.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely take some time to digest it and see how it gets implemented in conjunction with the housing ordinance. One area too that like I said, we're open to this, and the language is a bit more clear than kind of what we were discussing yesterday, and certainly what's already in the bill, the 30%. This language is far more clear. One area is kind of like, and I know the landowners have brought this up in previous discussions is what is what would be deemed the appropriate timeline. So like even within the 30%, there's a timeline issue of what is that timeline, and then I'd say like understanding that that was a possible issue. Looking at the chair's draft proposal, like you also clarifying what is a failure to respond. Is it 7 days? Is it 5 days? Is it 10 days? There's things that can be further digested, I believe, but right now, like I said, we're definitely open to it.
Council members, any additional questions? I'll just add that we are on the amendment, and let's focus on the amendment. Go ahead, keep going.
This is related to the amendment because I'm thinking, I mean, any existing area like the Numila property where it's not a new development per se, it's not on land that hasn't had houses before, I can see us trying to put in some type of requirement like this for ag. Where the percentage is, how we do it, I think it's still in question. But on a new parcel like GNR, I see it being more subject to like our workforce housing requirement versus like ag one. Or I don't know how you combine it or mix it, but I know with our affordable housing requirement, you know, it does specify and has tiers as far as people that work in the area, income requirements, more along the line of what we've been hearing too. I'm not saying that that is like the ideal thing to do for like a Numila project, but I'm just trying to like dissect it now.
Just to be clear, Councilmember, and I believe that because the lot has been kind of scraped in the Numila situation, I believe that construction of 10 or more homes in there, even if it's considered a formally built out site, would still trigger the affordable housing ordinance.
Okay, so it's a new development. It's a new development. It's basically a new development. So I don't know if Adam is available to want to run across the street, but if we could get Adam here, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then for me, I mean, we kind of got to back up and redigest, I think, as far as, I mean, I do like our affordable housing requirements, you know, but to do affordable housing requirements in addition to, you know, the ag worker housing portion, I'm not exactly sure how that jives right now. I think I'll need a little bit more time to digest it.
Committee members, this is great discussion and questions for admin. Considering the discussion where it's going, I'm open to also deferring this, or continuing the discussion today on this particular item. And I just want to keep the conversations in the amendments, but since we did make a request for Adam to be here, just be cognizant of time. So I'll do Councilmember Cotton and then Councilmember Coley on the amendment.
So
as proposed.
Can Matt join at the place there too?
Kind of for both of them, like it's going to kind of go back and forth, and it's feeding on what Councilmember Kaneshiro just said. In our workforce housing, we, both for purchase and for rent, we put 50% where we are biasing towards people with regional background, and then certainly essential workers. We have all kinds of things where we are patterning it. So I guess first question, Matt. When we say 50% in our regular workforce housing, what's the problem like if we were to say 50%, like on an amendment like this?
So are you referring to the planning commission's amendment where they went from 30% and you wanted?
Well, like here we're looking, right now we're looking at the chair's amendment. So this is a wait list for ag workers. So presumably this means, you know, ideally 100% are going to be ag workers, which, you know, is fine. But I'm just, because it was said, how do we defend 30% or 50%? So we've certainly done 50% on other things. What makes it defensible or indefensible?
Matt Bracken, County Attorney. So when we're looking at conditions placed on development, zoning conditions, we have to go through it's a nexus analysis, and it derives from two lawsuits. It's called a Nolan-Dolan analysis because those are the two separate lawsuits. But Nolan-Dolan, essentially, it's a framework that's established by the court to determine if what the government is imposing is rationally related to the development is one component of it, and so there has to be a legitimate purpose for the government to impose it, and then whatever is imposed has to substantially advance that purpose, and then it also there also has to be a balance between the potential economic impact of that condition and the economic benefit to the developer. So there's kind of a myriad of things you have to look at to determine if the condition meets those requirements, let's say.
Okay, because that seems important to me. And then I guess this is for Director Hall, but either one of you, when I think of...
Yeah, you have a follow-up to that.
Okay.
When you said economic impact, this is an upzoning, right? So if you're going from ag to anything, plantation camp, that allows new construction, new development, that's an added economic impact benefit. So how is that taking something away from the landowner? It's giving them something, right?
Yeah, it's one of the considerations. Even though
so in the giving of that, can't we put how that should happen, like requirements, you know?
To a certain extent, and I would say that the housing ordinance is a good example of that.
Yes.
When the housing ordinance was introduced, there was a housing ordinance study that was done to determine where that line was, right? And so based on that study, you all created the housing ordinance, and it was based on exactly that. They used the Nolan-Dolan analysis to figure out, okay, where is the line that we can draw where it's too much, and what can we do that's below that line? So when you all adopted the latest additions or amendments to the housing ordinance, it was based on that.
So in this amendment, it does not draw any hard, fast line as far as requirements, like maybe the housing ordinance does, right? And so the housing ordinance had to find that nexus and had to go no further than whatever it is, 40% or whatever. But here, we're just saying, yeah, 100% to the ag workers as is possible, right? And then you have your list. If there are ag workers interested and able to fill those units, you do it. And if not, you go elsewhere. And it can be anywhere from 0 to 100%. So it's not a hard, fast requirement. So there's no worry about diminishing the property owner's economic availability or impact or what have you, correct?
Correct. It introduces a sliding scale based on the need, which is what we would need, right? And so by them creating this list, then we then know what the need is, and then they have to kind of abide by that need.
So the last part. So in essence, this amendment is better than the last amendment, because the last amendment was setting, and this does not.
Correct. The last amendment said a hard fast. Well, yeah.
But it still was just offering, not requirement.
Yeah, establish an offering of 30%, where this establishes you're offering up to 100%.
And first right of refusal, not actual. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Council members, any additional questions?
I'm glad that Housing Director Adam Reversi came in. If you could join the panel, please.
Adam, I think Councilmember Kaneshiro that had that question. Do you want to reiterate the question?
Well, I don't want to put him on the spot. You know, like if he needs time to like research it, I would love to give him time to research. I don't want to like put him on the spot and have him try to answer. But I guess my question prior was, would these developments, the plantation camp housing, trigger the county affordable housing ordinance?
Aloha, Councilmember Adam Reversi, Housing Director for the Housing Agency. Without having read the proposed plantation camp amendments and not having watched any of your prior discussion, I'm just giving an off-the-cuff response. But broadly speaking, the housing policy currently requires any housing development over 10 units to meet affordable housing requirements. And those requirements are triggered by a zoning action, a subdivision action, it's a list of things, application for building permits. If you recall, when we amended the housing policy in 2020, there were specific geographic areas that were carved out as exemption zones from the housing policy requirements. Those were designated town core areas where, as a matter of policy, we wanted to incentivize development in those areas. And the exemptions were premised on projects in those areas. To qualify for the exemptions, they had to be built to the maximum density permissible in that zoning area. The assumption being that it would result in a relatively higher number of smaller units that would, by their nature, be relatively affordable, and that it was only applicable in areas that were not visitor destination areas. So we knew in advance that those units that were being built would be for Kauai residents and not for vacation rentals. There had been, when plantation camps were just as a discussion item back then, there had been discussion that it may be appropriate to carve them out as similar exemption areas, depending on their densities, whether they could be TVRs. Again, I don't know. I haven't read the bill, so I don't know whether, as a policy matter, that's appropriate or not. But that had been discussed in the past. But I think under the current policy, it would trigger a workforce housing requirement.
Yeah, because I mean, I still want them to look into it because there's many layers to it. When we did the community plans, if you're in the town core area and you did form-based code and you built to the max density, then you wouldn't have affordable housing. I can't remember if the plantation camp, we noted it in the community plans. It's following form-based code. I can't remember if that means they don't need to do affordable housing or they need to. And then again, I mean, we've got a few layers that I would love them to look at just a little deeper before we make a decision, because it never came into my mind that the plantation camps are going to trigger the workforce housing. I always thought the 30% was kind of like the kind of like, how do we get the type of people in there that we want? So,
any additional questions, Councilmember Kaua'i?
Yeah, but actually, when you started this discussion, you talked about that in Numila's case, right? No, I'm sorry, in Kaua'i's case, that it's not fully layered over an existing plantation camp. So you're saying now that there's this new area. So being that it is a new area, that was your question about whether affordable housing would come into play.
But even on the existing areas, when we passed it, I didn't remember if we were requiring affordable housing or not, but I knew that's where we wanted housing to be. And now that I'm thinking about it, even if we're laying this plantation camp on Numila, which previously had houses, it sounds like they might still trigger the workforce housing requirement too, the county workforce housing requirement also, which then we have to be careful on what we're doing. You know, are we adding layers on top of layers? Or I mean, ideally, the way I'm thinking about it, if all of those trigger workforce housing, I think we'll be able to possibly incorporate everything we're trying to do into the workforce housing, everything that Council Chair is trying to do, because his amendment pretty much does that. He's trying to set the parameters, and the workforce housing already has those parameters.
Council members, we're still on the amendment. Any questions directly for admin while we have them?
And Adam, so wouldn't you say though that affordable housing is affordable housing, and then that's income that goes on income, right? But agricultural workforce housing isn't necessarily, because I mean the way we're setting this up is not mentioning anything about income.
Well, the current housing policy makes no reference to agricultural workforce housing. I think when the housing policy was created way back in 2008, I don't think there were provisions in the zoning code for ag worker housing. So it's just really silent.
So the two different tracks, if you will, of law can coexist to get us to a place where maybe we have ag workers living in affordable housing, but they don't have to necessarily, or they can't necessarily be the same bill, because you have everything set with your.
I mean, to clarify, the housing policy simply considers housing units. You have a physical housing unit. It doesn't define it as ag worker housing or resident housing or, I guess the only distinction it makes is it in a VDA area? That's really the only distinction between a one-bedroom house anywhere on Kauai is, under the housing policy, is it for visitors or is it for residents? And no, there is no distinction about ag worker housing.
Any additional questions on the amendment, Colin, and then Kanashiro?
And can staff please hand Adam Reversi a copy of our amendment? Okay, so I want to just talk about a wait list for a moment, and it might not be nearly so problematic here as it is for workforce housing. But Director Reversi, when the wait list is gone through, when people are waiting for housing, they have to call everybody on the wait list. So when a unit opens up, actually I'll wait for Director Hull because I want him to hear my question. It's actually directed at all three of you, so sorry. If you want to finish first, I'll let you. So when a unit opens up in one of our workforce housing, it can be months before it's filled because they have to call everybody and they have to give them a few days to answer. So it's shockingly takes a long time to fill an open unit in the workforce housing. Is that your experience? I mean, I just know that from people trying to get in.
So to clarify, the existing home buyer wait list that sorry, apologies. The existing
I'm really thinking about apartments, rentals.
Right. So the wait list that my office maintains is only applicable to for sale housing. We don't maintain a waiting list for rental units, and part of the reason for that is that, as a generalization, most of the rental projects on Kauai are not owned by the county. They're all owned by different individual, either for-profit or non-profit development agencies. Okay. They're all managed by different companies. So every one of those properties maintains their own property-specific waiting list.
So I will simplify that then. So, Director Hull, when we look at these public-private sort of workforce housing programs, I do know that they have a big list, and it takes a very long time for them. A very long time might be a few months, which is a long time if you're waiting on a place. And so I am concerned the way this is set up, though when I look at A, it says wait list for agricultural workers. A wait list shall be maintained for agricultural workers who are, that means currently, employed on site by an agricultural business engaging in farm operations on the subject parcel. So if we had an on-site business, they would probably be easier to communicate with. So maybe we would have less of a wait list problem, would you think? I mean, because I just know how crazy it is, the wait list problems in most of our affordable housing. So if we have a wait list, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, how that wait list would be maintained is definitely going to have to work out and establish for the landowners because they're going to have to provide us proof of that wait list being maintained and constantly used.
Yeah, and as Councilmember Kanashiro brought up an issue, if somebody's in a year-long lease contract, but they definitely want to move there's all kinds of barriers. And the reason I'm asking this, and this is about this agenda item, the reason I'm asking this, and I'm hoping that our people who represent the landowners will be willing to come and testify on this particular thing, is there's a business model. So if you have unfilled units for a long time, or there's not, if you have to have it at a rate that people can pay, they could ask too much. They could ask, I think the example was $4,000 a month, and none of the workers can do it, so then that kind of sloughs them off. I mean, do you see a way where the goal of this can happen and it actually functions economically. My worry is, we just passed the first bill. I know it was committee, so it's still going on, but we just passed the first bill that makes these units more expensive. And if we make it untenable, maybe just none of this will get built. So that's, I mean, have you had this discussion with the landowners? Has this piece been contemplated when we came up with 30%? I know I asked you, I wanted a percentage.
Yeah. So the 30% was originally represented by testimony from one of the ag operations. And so the commission kind of gravitated towards that.
Okay.
Kind of a legal nod, like it might be okay. And so that's where the 30% came from.
Okay.
And at least in discussions with the landowners, they were amenable to it.
Okay. Any consideration of more than that? Was there something that...
Like I said, the testimony they received, I believe was 30 or as much as 50%. And the discussion that evolved on the commission floor was on a spot fly read. That's why I don't want to hold the county attorney that was there. Like, response was usually, there's not enough time to formulate a formal opinion, but there may be some concerns with the 50%. And so that's how that 30% evolved.
Any additional questions, council members, regarding the amendment, Councilmember Concho?
No, so going back to our affordable housing policy, we do have eligibility requirements, priorities, and preferences for affordable rental units. And the first preference is an employee of the developer. Second preference is geographical, and then I believe there is a few others. I'm a little rusty on it, but that I think is
Essential
similar.
workers.
That's similar to, I mean, it's going along the line of what Council Chair is trying to do and saying, you know, let's try to get the priority to the type of people we want there. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can mend the two. I guess my question is, when even though it's just a number, when the developers decided on the 30%, did they know that they were also required to do the workforce housing, county workforce housing?
I did not have a specific conversation with them on that, but to go back to Adam's point, it was contemplated that should these places be carved out, because clearly what's going on there has been a local inventory standpoint. And I remember those discussions back when we originally were doing FBC for the counts, and at that time the owners were kind of like, all of our tenants are well below the rental rates, and we pretty much all of them qualify for affordable rates. And we're like, we're not doing 30, we're like doing 100% affordable in the camps right now. Yeah, if you want to carve it out, but it wasn't a big deal at the time. I haven't had those conversations recently with them, but at the time it was kind of like everything qualifies as affordable. So what's the point, kind of?
Any additional questions on the amendment, Councilmember Kuligi?
Just the last question for Director Reversi from Housing. So with some of the concerns brought up about wait lists, and then you said that you only manage the home buyer wait list. So at the housing agency, is there any kind of wait list for the HUD, and how is that managed?
Yes, there is an extensive wait list for what we often think of as the Section 8 voucher program. So we have well over 1,000 people on that wait list. But it's a long explanation why it is so long, because people are legally allowed to sign up for that wait list from anywhere in the country. They don't have to be a resident.
And so that point exactly. So in either case, right, whether it's the home buyer list or the HUD Section 8 list, it's actually a broad list open to a big pool of potential candidates. But with this particular ag workers, it says a wait list shall be maintained for agricultural workers who are employed on site by an agricultural business engaging in farm operations. Do you think in the ability to manage wait lists that in fact this wait list would be such a small, easily managed wait list compared to what you have to do?
Well, I think I could answer that by explaining why the affordable housing wait lists take so long to process people through. So each individual affordable housing project on Kauai has taken different pools of federal money and state money, and every pool of funding has some strings attached. So when somebody is applying at, for instance, the new Kaua'i affordable housing project, it's not so simple as to just tell them how much you make and move in. You've got to provide your tax returns. You have to provide your last 3 bank statements. You've got to provide 6 months of pay stubs. There's a criminal background check. there's a lot of paperwork that a low-income tenant has to be able to provide to navigate through that system because of all these hoops that have been attached to the funding. Presumably, if you're just demonstrating that you're an employee of an agricultural project, you're not having to provide all of that paperwork, and it's not going to take you. You're not going to have to mail the IRS to get a copy of your last 3 years to 2 years of tax returns and things like that. So my presumption, not knowing anything more, is that it would be far simpler to administer and navigate than what we face when we're dealing with these affordable housing projects.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other additional questions on the amendment, committee members?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment before we vote, or if we vote.
I'm hoping we have public testimony.
Yeah.
Any other questions for admin? Thank you, admin. I'll call the meeting back to order. We're on the amendment still. So for the process, we'll do discussion amongst committee members. If in the discussion we're leaning either way on the amendment, I'd recommend, in order for us to continue the discussion on the amendment and for more further review for our admin and for the public, it will need to be voted into. And I just recommend to the committee that if you guys want that to happen, I'd like to make that vote today if possible. And also, I'm also willing and open to the committee to defer this entire bill so that we can continue these discussions. So we're right on the amendment right now for discussion on the amendment. So we'll go.
I have a process question.
Yes.
Two process questions.
Khan?
One is I have a question I would like to ask the introducer of the bill, the chair. And then the other one is, even if we were to move it past, we've pretty much heard all of the bill, right? So we don't have to hear from them more?
No.
We haven't. So I would want to finish the bill, but can I ask is it okay if I ask the chair a question?
On the amendment?
Yeah.
Council Chair, or Councilmember Khan.
So I absolutely appreciate the spirit of what is happening right here with this amendment. You know, and when it is a plantation camp, we're calling it a plantation camp. All right, it's about the ag workers. How would you feel like if we made the wait list for employees of the landowners and their lessees? Because when I think about the plantation camps, I appreciate when you're saying don't think about the individual who they have, but like when there's a strip of a little bit of businesses in there, you know, with people who work the business, there's that, there might be the pastor, there might be all kinds of people that are somewhat a part of it, you know, or in the case of one of these landowners, they have, you know, I don't know if you could call golf an agricultural product, they're growing grass, but like when they have their whole other piece of their business there, they have, I think, 18,000 acres. You know, can it work for any of the workers of the 18,000 acres? There's a lot of land in it, you know, and it's kind of really crazy that they can't hire people of good paying jobs because they can't find any housing for people. I think we could get our own people hired onto these places if they had housing and a good paying job. I mean, how do you feel about that? Does it absolutely destroy the idea of a plantation?
Again, you know, I'm going on the premise that we are using plantation camps as the reason why we're allowing this upzone. Again, I'm not on the committee. You can decide who you want to add in that list, but you know, number one, it's not a Section 8 list. It's not a very limited number of employees at these ag farms, these ag operations. If it was up to me, if I was in charge of this, I'd have the employer maintain the list. And when a vacancy comes up, you just call the employer. Say, hey, you know, send me the next one on your list. I don't expect the landowner to maintain this list. I mean, how in the heck is a landowner going to be keeping track of who comes and who goes, especially in operations that have seasonal workers? And So for me, it was very simple. You have the employee, and it's an employee benefit, right? I mean, if you're going out and trying to attract workers, you can use it as an employee benefit that, you know, there's a possibility of getting agricultural worker housing, and they can maintain the list. Who goes on that list? Again, you know, if this wasn't called a plantation camp ordinance or development or designation, then, you know, it's a different discussion.
Okay.
It's
So
a different discussion.
I probably have a question for Director Hall, because I might have a gap in my understanding. So can I ask you a question?
I'll suspend the rules. Director Hall?
So I'm thinking about New Milla specifically. So in my mind, New Milla is the plantation of what was formerly A and B. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
So when I think of what was formerly A and B, that would include Kukui'ula. And it would include Wainiha, that whole area up at the top there.
I'm not familiar. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just not familiar with Wainiha and land
Well, they
ownership.
have all that land up the high area. They bought
It may be controversial. I
Okay.
don't know off the top of my head the ownership.
Okay,
so I'm
so-
not saying no. I'm just saying it could.
Okay, so with New Milla, that is Brew Bacal Capital Partners TMKs. All of their TMKs, is that part of the New Milla plantation?
No.
No, what plantation does New Milla, it's only this, I mean, like, when we're looking at this, when it's a plantation camp, who is it a plantation camp for? Oh, maybe it's Shalea who has these answers. I'm sorry, Shalea. Didn't mean any disrespect on that. So, Shalea, which parcels support New Milla?
Yeah, give me a second just to pull up the TMK. So the amendment that we're looking at right now is only on TMK 22001-001, and that is where the existing or was existing until they demoed the plantation camp houses were.
But on this, and you've looked at this amendment when it says wait list for agricultural workers. A wait list shall be maintained for agricultural workers who are employed on site. Okay, here's the key thing: by an agricultural business engaging in farm operations on the subject parcel. So the subject parcel certainly isn't just the camp. So
It's
what
not
are
the camp, and
parcels?
as the discussion about the contiguous lines, so that as drafted would apply to any the parcel that New Milla is on, as well as any adjacent parcel that is under contiguous ownership of BBCP.
So I guess not.
So to the point of like Wainiha, like that definitely is not contiguous
would be.
ownership. They would not be.
And then because I don't have a good map in my head, I know that BBCP is a pretty big parcel of land.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it has Kukui'ula. Some of it has other things. Is New Milla contiguous with the land that is also Kukui'ula?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
All right, maybe
It may be,
somebody
but I
knows.
just don't have that off the top of my head.
Any additional questions for admin? Thank you. I'll call the meeting back to order. We're back into discussion on the amendment. I had Councilmember Kanisha and then Councilmember.
Oh, we're gonna take public testimony?
Yeah, we need.
On the amendment?
On the
Yes.
amendment.
We didn't on the last one.
I know, and I said we should have, but we didn't.
Okay, we can suspend the rules. We'll do public testimony. Is there anyone wishing to testify on the amendment in particular?
We have one registered speaker, Howard Green.
Please come on up. You have 3 minutes to testify. You can sit in the center. When you press the button, the green light will turn on the button so that the mic is on. Please introduce yourself.
Aloha, council members. Chair Raposo, thank you for having me. My name is Howard Green. I represent KN Robinson. Am I just testifying on this amendment here?
Just on the amendment.
Well,
You can come back later.
Okay.
But this is whether you could do 100% or 30%.
This is just on the amendment.
Did you see the amendment?
Yes. the one glaring problem I have with this, it says only for agricultural workers on the subject property. Having ag on the west side is good for our business as well as all the other ag businesses. This is one of the problems we've had in the past. We would like to entertain ag worker housing for all ag workers across the west side, because having more ag just supports our business with economies of scale, with outside contractors, support on equipment and stuff like that. So more ag is better. So we try to weave the fabric of our community to help our business as well as the greater west side. And we're just talking about literally Gay and Robinson here and some of Numila, but trying to support our business. We make decisions on a daily basis on who enters our camps, and it's primarily for the betterment of the West Side community. It's not always ag workers that have priority. And I guess going back to Mel's question, when we went through this plantation camp process, we gave you guys our housing policy. So you guys could go back and look at kind of our tiers and selection priorities for who we give housing to. And, we've managed it that way for 130 years, and it's worked quite well. We're not always going to pick an ag worker that's on the property. That's good for business. The best tenants we have in our housing are tenants that work on the property because they behave themselves, they appreciate their location, they're part of the community. It just works out better than having some random outsider. It's just that's how we operate. But it's not always an ag worker. I mean, we could have a kapuna who comes and says, hey, I need assistance. My granddaughter's willing to take care of me. Do you have a house for her? And we'll say, yeah, we actually have a house right next door. We can put you in there and you can take care of your grandma.
Sorry, Herb, we have a time limit.
Okay.
But we do have, we can do another 3 minutes. Is there anyone else wishing to testify for the first time on the amendment?
Yes, we have another registered speaker, Wayne Katayama.
Wayne?
Good. It's still morning. Good morning, Chair, members of the council. Wayne Katayama speaking on behalf of Kauai Coffee. However, I would like to sort of interject decades of sort of agricultural involvement. And the discussions that you're having here this morning is critical conversation on how we move forward. And I think the key is the preservation of a culture that we can soon lose, the sort of the fabric of the West Side community, which each of you sort of talked about. And I applaud the planning department for addressing a critical need for our agriculture enterprises to be successful in the future. And I think one term that's always been challenging in my entire ag career is the definition of an ag worker. And I think for this particular case, maybe we should change the definition or the term ag worker to a farm worker. And as Howard has mentioned, in their keeping of their property, they're very inclusive of farm workers, first of all, and focus on that. Yet they're very expanding to other needs. And again, for Gay and Robinson and the Kamakani camp, when AMB closed down Numila camp, some of our old-time householders moved into Kamakani, so I'm very, very thankful for them. And I think that is the sort of the spirit that we want to preserve, and as we move forward with the plantation camp architecture. Again, the fear, I guess, that I have is when you change from an agricultural zone to an urban, you could take many different paths, and some of those could be unintended. So again, the discussion that you're having here and the amendment that you have proposed is on point of what needs to be done, protecting the fabric of our farm heritage. Thank you.
Next testifier, we had someone.
We have registered speaker Sean Smith.
Good morning, everybody. Sean Smith for BBCP.
Morning.
Thank you, everybody. This has been an engaging conversation, and it's changing dramatically how we've been down. I just wanted to give a little background real quick on how this all happened, and just kind of, I see everybody's points. Everybody we're all longtime friends, see the value we're at, and kind of approaching us 18 months ago with this idea of how do I get workforce housing back on Kauai where we can solve these things. We got excited because one is a landowner and a 30-year partnership with Kauai Coffee on our lands. We saw it as an opportunity to partner up. They need housing for their workers. We need housing for our workers. So that's what really got us really engaged in this, seeing how it comes to be, what we could do to participate. So when it comes into this amendment here specifically, where it's 100% to the lessee, that's a really hard thing for me to go back to my loyal employees of Kukui'ula who are farm workers and all kinds of workers to try to help them housing, try to get them to come to work, try to get them some sort of spot on Kauai. So I hope there's a little way we can do that and get back to a partnership on that rather than just push it all to a farm worker that's a lessee on the property instead of the owner. I think it just takes a lot of motivation away to try to have to build these. It's just, I mean, as hard as that is to say, and then also just to find out now that there's now possible another 30% workforce attached to a workforce development starts getting a little bit more challenging at all. That's all I wanted to say.
I have a clarifying question.
Councilmember Cowding, clarifying question for.
Sure.
Okay, so when you're saying 30%, like that is new for you, is that correct?
Yes, I mean, and whether it's just ignorant, it was always my assumption if you're building a workforce or affordable housing, you wouldn't be hit with a 30% requirement as well. That never was a conversation, so that's new.
So when you're building a workforce housing, you're basically building it 100%, right?
Basically.
So you don't have a problem with 100%. What you have a problem with is the term agriculture.
Well, a little combination of both, and I don't want to paint myself in a corner here too, because again, I want to sit with the fact that we are very excited about trying to do a project and partner with Kauai Coffee, and to have workforce housing, which would also help our employees as well as Kauai Coffee's. As far as we sat through the Planning Commission hearings, and initially when it came was, would you be willing to dedicate 30% of whatever you build to Kauai Coffee employees? Absolutely. We'd love to have them involved in this too. And that's how it always was under the understanding. Now it seems to be changing a little direction. So I heard the word deferral. I mean, I'm actually going to have to go back to our principals and our lawyers to see if this is something that even is feasible. So we need to have that conversation.
Thank you, Sean. We have one more
clarifying question.
Okay, we'll go to Councilman Quillen and back to you.
Just a clarifying question. Sure. I thought I heard you say, because your concern is not necessarily about 30% versus 100%. What you're saying is, in the language that says agricultural workers who are employed on site. So you're saying who are employed by Kauai Coffee, the lessee, but you're wanting it to also include who are employed on site or by the landowner. Because are you saying that you have ag workers working not on site?
100%.
Okay.
I really need to show some loyalty to
So
to
it's
the
still
main
ag
250.
workers though?
Yeah, they're so, well, I mean, again, let's go to farm workers like Mr. Katayama
farm
said. Yeah,
workers.
I mean, ag's a really kind of vague and tough word to say, or think you're just pulling weeds or harvesting crops, and that gets a little bit tough.
Sean, one more clarifying question by Councilman.
Okay, so I wasn't clear if you said that Kukuiola is contiguous with New Mila.
Kauai coffee fields is over 4,000 acres, and that crawls south and west, and then it does abut other land ownerships of BBCP.
So when you're talking about your farm workers, are they workers of Kukuiola, or are they, what kind of farm work do they do?
The workforce housing that I am hopeful for that would qualify for BBC employees is Kukuiola workers.
Okay, and that's a whole range of work they do, whole range of work.
You got machinists, you got groundskeepers, you got golf, you got kitchen workers, you got all kinds.
And a few of them grow food. You have a little garden farm up there, and a reservoir.
Yep.
A reservoir could be considered part of farming.
We do have a farm
Thank
attached
you.
to that reservoir.
Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Any additional testimony first time? Anyone looking to testify for a second time? I think Howard, you wanted to continue. Yeah. Come on up, Howard.
Well, again, Howard Green. I'd just like to touch on the definition of ag worker here. If we're to offer these to ag workers, if we offered it to an ag company, we have an issue right now where they rent houses in our camps, and they're transient agricultural workers. So these houses are often empty for long periods at a time, and then when the workers come in, sometimes they're speaking different languages. They're talking to relatives in the middle of the night in different countries, and it's very disruptive in our camp communities. So we're trying to create agricultural workforce housing sort of outside of the camps in conjunction with our tenants on our property. So that's one issue we have about offering this to ag companies, is that definition. The other one is a lot of our households have multiple rent payers who qualify for our houses. One works at a hotel, one works ag, maybe on the farm, off the farm. But how do we quantify to say what is an ag worker in that household? So that's kind of an issue. Anyways, I just want to bring up that point. Again, we try to, do what's best for the plantation community, and sometimes it is an ag worker, sometimes it's not. But we've done this successfully for a long time now, and our plan is to continue on this path to put people in our camps that support the business. And as you know, of our 50,000 acres, 99% of that is ag land or watershed. So that's about all I got.
I have a clarifying question.
Councilmember Cotton, clarifying question for you.
I have a clarifying question. So you struggled with the word ag worker. You were out of the room when Mr. Katayama said farm worker. Does it sound accurate? I'm hearing you to be saying, what is, if we were to say, workers that support the needs of the plantation? Because you might have a bookkeeper, you might have somebody who does your insurance policies or does your pipes or whatever. So would that be a word that would fit? That would, if you said employees who fit the needs of employees who work for the benefit of the plantation? Because that could be your leases. I mean, but can you come up with a better phrase?
I like that suggestion. It's leading in the right direction. I appreciate everyone's effort here. It sounds like we're starting to get into really micromanaging our business, but I know you folks have concerns of, you know, what might happen in 100 years from now, because this is an ordinance, right, that stays on the books. I hope we're still around in 100 years managing this property, and I think the Robinson Ohana intends to be. But yeah, we might put people in that, you know, run the used to be the company store, but, you know, now is, you know, Thrifty Mart, Aloha Bakery, or JP's Pizza. You know, all those employees and operators live in the camps. You know, are they ag workers? No, but they're part of the fabric of the community that supports ag in general. So,
thank you, Howard. Any additional testifiers for a second time? I'll call this meeting back to order. Committee members discussion, final discussion.
Actually, I have a real quick question. Again for maybe Kaua'i, I guess.
I'll suspend the rules, Director Hall.
Is there any time constraint on this bill where if we deferred, where I don't know, something moving or rolling already?
No, I mean we're open to a deferral,
Okay.
and I maybe we would be fine with a 30-day deferral to kind of try and iron out some kinks and see if there's any additional possible language to help on the implementation side. I'd say that for all the other bills that are coming, if there's a deferral on this one, they're all integrated. So we can sit here and discuss them all as well, but ultimately, you know,
we won't do that.
Yeah, sometimes. And then lastly, I'd say that the one that we did have a time constraint on, you folks just acted on. The wildfire bill is because we upzoned other portions of those areas that are wildfire prone. So we hope to get action on that one at full council on next week. But as far as this slate of zoning mechanisms for Ka'awanui and Numila, there's not a time constraint on our end.
Any additional questions for Director Hall regarding this amendment?
You see this amendment as better than the last amendment that we just passed, even though the bill in general needs more work and could be deferred.
Cursory glance, it looks like it's a lot better from an implementation standpoint.
Yeah.
I can't make any value assessments at this point, being so fresh, but from an implementation standpoint, it's much clearer.
Any
I
additional
have a question on that one.
Councilmember Cowden.
So when you say that the bill that we just passed,
No bill.
I mean, excuse me, the agenda item that we passed on wildland urban interface that we just passed, that has a time constraint?
Sorry, this is we're still on the amendment on the second bill.
I know, I'm asking the question. Please, can I ask for your...
We met the time constraint.
Based on Sunshine Line, we couldn't even discuss on the current item.
I apologize. I'll make that statement, retract that statement, and I'll definitely make that statement here at council next. But I can retract that. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Director Hall. Any additional questions on this amendment? No. I'll call the meeting back to order. Back on the amendment in our committee. Any final discussions on this amendment? Councilmember Kanshiro, then Councilmember.
I'll try to talk first just so everybody knows where I'm at on it. I'm not ready to pass this amendment as it is. I do want to keep the amendment up. And my thinking, once everybody had a chance to discuss, I would love to just defer it. Because I think there's more work that needs to be done just on the direction of what we're going to do. I mean, I see there's like two paths. Right now, if they do these developments, it's either going to trigger the affordable housing policy, or if they exempt the affordable housing policy, then we're going to use something like this amendment here to try and do something similar to what our affordable housing policy does, but less restrictive on what we want to do. So I think we just need more time to work on it. I mean, ideally, we look at, like, one option would be to say, we're not going to use this amendment. We'll use our affordable housing policy, or maybe do an amendment that incorporates the ag or farm worker into one of the criteria for the rental housing, which the criteria is already set in the affordable housing policy on the types of criteria, the priorities. Or we say, that's going to take too long, or it's going to be more restrictive, and it would be easier if we put that criteria here in this amendment. So I think that's like my two things I'm juggling. I don't know which is the right way. I think we got to ask the attorneys, we got to ask Adam, we got to ask everybody, like, what is the fastest, easiest way to get to where we want to get to? And I think we're almost there, you know, like we're talking about what is the criteria, what type of criteria we want. The affordable housing policy has it already, but, you know, there might be additional stuff that we want, you know, highlighting farm workers or ag workers, you know, and that might have to come into the amendment. But I think, yeah, we just need a little more time on it. And being that there's no rush on it, I would make the motion at the end once everybody had their chance to say what they want to do. I would love to defer it for a month.
Councilmember Cotton, then Councilmember Cotton.
I am in agreement with Councilmember Kaneshiro. We don't want exploitation of the plantation camp zoning, as I believe Chair Raposa was essentially saying. I definitely support what I'm hearing from Gay and Robinson representative and Wayne Katayama, that we want the preservation of the culture. So I'm good with that. I think when we're talking about what we're going to do with the rest of the meeting, we did not have a first read on this, not really. We just blew through it. We didn't discuss it. All these things could have come up. I do want to still hear all the rest of the bills on here and work with them. And I very much feel like what we passed with the wildland urban interface, it matters in the collective of how we're talking about this, because I support the intention of what's going on with that, and it's an expensive way to build. So if we ask them to build very expensive structures and we make sure they can't financially make it work, especially if they can't house their own employees of the landowners, with the way the whole plantation functions together, that's a problem. I don't think we should separate out the first bill, and I certainly don't think we should skip the rest that are on here, because we skipped it on first read, and I really had a problem with that at the time. And we need to have at least this time so we have a first read. We don't just push them all forward. That was, I felt like, a mistake last time. We would have been able to have this committee function better if we had had all this discussion in the first read, as it should have been.
Councilmember Clooney.
I'm not sure what Councilmember Cowdery is talking about. In first reading, we don't do the work that we do in committee. We just pass it out of the full council. We just didn't have a presentation. That's the only difference.
It's a big difference.
And we had a very thorough and good presentation today. And while it's fresh on our mind, we're having our discussion. I'm ready to support this amendment today. The primary reason is this amendment is better than the amendment we passed prior. And yes, it'll take more work. Maybe there needs to be some kind of language that's added. I'm not proposing any kind of amendment to the amendment at this time, but to add the concern about property owner, agricultural worker, farm worker, employees. But this amendment is much better than the amendment we've already passed, and we're going to defer the full bill to continue working on it here in committee. So, but I'm ready to pass this particular amendment. I think some of the confusion has happened because discussion went everywhere and not just focus on just the amendment. So after this, I'm assuming we're not going to have any discussion on the full bill. We can just do it to defer. But I'm ready to support the amendment today.
Just real quick, you know, the whole reason why I brought up when I first spoke earlier, you know, you got to take the names and personalities out of this, because this isn't a bill about the companies or the landowners. This is about an ordinance that we are looking at passing that's going to be impacting generations. I did want to thank Howard, Sean, Wayne for coming here, because that's what this is about, is getting information. And what I heard today, honestly, I'm not ready to support this. I'm not voting today, but if I was, I wouldn't be ready to vote on this amendment today because of the information that we received today. I think it's valuable to hear from y'all, and I can honestly say, it wouldn't break my heart if you guys withdrew this amendment and we go back to the drawing board. I think you guys get my, what I'm trying to do is making sure that we're not, and again, I hate saying these things because you guys think I'm talking about who you work for, and it's not the case. It's what we said today in this ordinance, or when this ordinance passes, becomes a precedent for others to follow. And not every company are good community people like yours. Not everyone. And somebody sees that, it's an opportunity. So we got to make sure. That's why I'm not ready today, because you guys brought up some things that I really got to go back and revisit. But we cannot. We got to make sure that we're not allowing people to exploit. Sean's question about the housing, affordable housing. If you were doing 100% of workforce housing, then you would have already been in compliance with. In other words, it's not a addition. You can, you make it. You'll be in compliance. So it's not an additional. The housing policy will kick in if you got more than 10 units, and then if you're doing 100% workforce or affordable, then you've met it. And there's no additional requirement. I really like the discussion about the supporters of ag or farm. To me, I think ag. It's not just the ag company. I'm thinking the ag operation, farm operation. It's kind of semantics here. I'm not a farmer. I'm not an ag guy, but when I hear the term ag employee or employee of an agricultural operation, I'm just thinking the operation in general. I also want to revisit the employees, just workforce in general, workforce housing in general, because the need is so great. I don't know what the numbers are, and that's probably one of the reasons why we should defer is because, I'm curious to know how many, again, not using company names, but how many workers or employees are we actually talking about? Yeah. How many of them are actually looking for a place to live? There's so many unknowns that without the data, and that's why I kind of like this amendment better, because it does provide a sliding scale, so it doesn't require you. I don't know what would happen with 30%, and you don't have 30% of the employees that need a home. Then what? You're in violation of the ordinance because you don't have 30%. When it said a minimum of 30, what if only 3 employees want a house? And then you're not meeting that requirement. So that was kind of the reason why the county attorney's office had to relook at that number. But yeah, we'll take a look at a lot of what was discussed today and hopefully come up with a better amendment. Thank you.
Councilmember Cooley.
Okay, based on what Chair just shared, it's an amendment. So there'll be amendments. We'll continue working on this. The amendment doesn't pass today. The only caution I would give is don't get married to the amendment that we passed earlier. Because if this is a better amendment than what we passed earlier, and when we're back here in 2 weeks, we work on this amendment, ultimately this amendment will replace what we passed earlier. So I was just trying to get us to a cleaner place where we're working going forward. But for the next 2 weeks, don't be married to the amendment that we passed, because there's still more things to work on. So I can withdraw my amendment when you guys are ready.
Yeah, I was going to say, not married to it. I think when we passed the 30%, it got it consistent with everything else. As we make changes now, moving forward, whether it's this current amendment or anything else, then we're going to get to change everything all consistently as we move forward. But we just got to get to that point on agreeing on what it is, what direction we're heading on with that. So I completely agree with that.
And the other thing is, let's confirm the affordable housing requirements and what have you, because I see that as 2 separate tracks. And there's no reason, because we have this agricultural worker system, wait lists, what have you, that we would give up our, unless that's argued, and it would be very specific, like the town core areas. But I don't believe that's anything like that is in place. So if we want to put that in place, that's probably another bill. Yeah, so, everybody ready? I'll withdraw.
Any additional discussion?
I have
just on
something
the amendment.
I know, this is on the amendment. I personally I'm okay if we choose to move this out to another committee meeting with this amendment still standing, because I think it represents some leverage. You know, we want to, I'm okay with either one. I think 100% is way too much. I think the 30% the way it was before is way too open. You know, so I think it's important that if I felt I heard something correctly, if it is not economically feasible to build housing for workers that either don't exist or that they don't suit the needs of the people paying to build the housing, then they simply won't build the housing. Did you determine the answer on that?
No, I'm just finding out procedurally
Okay.
what my next step is.
Okay,
We can
because I was
continue.
talking to you, so,
I thought,
well, I'm talking to everybody, but certainly you. So, it's just rude to turn around and talk while I'm talking.
it's rude for you to talk to me like the way you're talking to me right now.
Council members, any additional discussion?
Yeah, we
on
went through
the
this before, last meeting we went through this. So,
I can do two things at once. I can listen to you. I don't have to be looking at you every second.
Council members, any final discussion on this amendment?
For me, we've been.
Councilmember
sorry,
Kaua'i.
sorry. Yeah, overall, appreciate all the discussion, but I totally support on the deferral. To me, we need to look at stuff like that. There's lots more information, good dialogue going back and forth. We went from ag worker to farm worker, kind of going back and forth and all that. So overall, my mind is going with some solid information, I believe, but we need more time.
Procedurally, on an amendment, either we act on it or I withdraw it. So if we're not voting on it, I move to withdraw this amendment.
I withdraw my second.
Thank you. So the amendment was
Back to the
withdrawn. Now we're back to the original bill as amended with the First Amendment Bill number 2963. We're in final discussion on this bill. Any final discussion?
I'll just let the committee know any final discussion. If not, I think we should move to defer to October 22nd. But I'll let anybody do final discussion before I make the motion.
Anyone for final discussion?
If not, I move to defer to the October 22nd meeting.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Then this bill number 2963 is deferred to October 22nd committee meeting. It's 11:49. Our next caption is at 12:30.
We can probably
We'll get the next bill number 2964. Please read that
It's
in.
just to receive it.
Bill number 2963, a bill for an ordinance amending Kaua'i, Kauai County General Plan 2018, relating to a parcel located in Wahiawa, Kauai. County of Kauai Planning Department applicant GPA-2025-2 Numila-General Plan Amendment.
Move to receive.
Second.
It's been moved to receive and has been seconded. Any public testimony? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Oops, I apologize. Roll call vote to receive Bill 2964.
Council members Carvalho,
Aye.
Howden,
Aye.
Kanashiro,
Aye.
Kuali'i,
Aye.
Committee Chair Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item, please.
Bill number 2964, a bill for an ordinance amending the state land use district boundary relating to a parcel located in Wahiawa, Kauai, County of Kauai Planning Department applicant A-2025-2 Numila State Land Use Amendment.
Move to receive.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any testimony? Any public or any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Roll
Oh,
call.
I apologize. Roll call.
Councilmember Carvalho,
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden,
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro,
Aye.
Councilmember Kuali'i,
Aye.
Chairman Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Next item.
Bill number 2965, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 3, Kauai County Code 1987, as amended, relating to the West Kauai Community Plan Implementing Ordinance 2020, County of Kauai Planning Department applicant, ZA-2025-6, Kauai West Kauai Community Plan Amendment.
Move to defer to October 22nd. Move to approve.
We might be able to approve.
I thought you said they were all related. They did. Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'd like to bring up Director Hall on Bill 2965. I'll suspend the rules.
Thank you, Chair. Kaua'i on behalf of the Planning Department. Because these are intertwined with the other bills, generally we're going to be asking for a deferral. If you want us to present on it, we can, but... Okay. So this is for the Kaua'i plantation camp area. We do have a few housekeeping amendments. One is just there's the 30% is one of the housekeeping. That's clearly going to need to be discussed further.
Let's have a member introduce the amendment so we can all see it.
I'll move to amend as. Okay, whose name?
I move to amend as circulated.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll just get that out to everybody first. Then, Director Hall, I just want to explain.
Yeah, so there's some housekeeping measures in here. The 30% is also in here, but clearly there's going to be needing further discussion. So that's in here. The meets and bounds, which just formalizes the actual surveyed area. And then lastly, it's an incorporation of the wildfire requirements because there's a form-based code actual booklet, and so what's reflected in the wildfire ordinance would also be reflected in the booklet. So it's not a total hardcore requirement that needs to be there from a regulatory standpoint, but as an interface with the user to be able to use the booklet, and it has the wildfire regulations ready and available. It's just appropriate. But none of these proposals really change anything substantive.
Councilor Khan, question?
Yes, I see that the manager of the land is in the house. Did you work with them and they were supportive of all of this relative to the booklet? Gay and Robinson was worked with and supportive. Okay.
Yes. Any other additional questions for Director Hall? Since the rules are suspended, is there any testimony on this amendment? Seeing
Howard?
none.
Are you testifying? No.
Seeing none, we'll call the meeting back to order.
He's
Any
thinking.
final discussion?
Yeah, I'll say just for simplicity purposes, I know we have the 30% in again. I think to keep everything consistent, I say we vote for the amendment, not try to pull anything out. We'll start clean slate. All of the bills have the 30% in, and as we come back with a amendment or whatever we do on the deferral, then we'll be able to move. We know we need to change everything the same way on all the rest of the bills. I'm ready to vote for it as is.
We'll suspend the rules and bring back public testimony. How would you like to testify on the amendment that is reflecting the same amendment that was done by
and putting in the fire code?
Aloha, Howard Green.
And just to clarify to our testifiers, just to mimic, so that Bill 2961 and this one that we're currently talking, so it stays the same as we move into the further discussion for the next committee meeting.
As far as the 30% goes, I just want to clarify, we're in favor of that and we could work with that. Definitions and semantics and how it all takes place is a whole other issue, but we're very much supportive of it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And the wildfire as well.
You're very much supportive of the wildfire.
Yes, as burdensome as it is, my one concern is
I apologize, Howard. This is a separate bill, so we can get your.
Oh, okay.
That was a separate bill that we just passed. So
It just is in there on the fire code. The booklet.
on Exhibit C, you're giving a question on Exhibit C and D.
Okay.
Thank you, Howard. We'll call the meeting back to order. Any other final discussion on the amendment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Any final discussion on bill number 2965? As recommended, this would.
I'll make a motion to defer to October 22nd.
Second.
Is a motion and seconded. Roll call vote.
Councilmembers Carvalho,
Aye.
Cowden,
Aye.
Kanashiro,
Aye.
Kuali'i,
Aye.
Committee Chair Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes. Defer to October 22nd.
Next item, please.
Bill number 2966, a bill for an ordinance amending Kaua'i Kauai County General Plan 2018, relating to a parcel located in Makaweli, Kauai, County of Kauai Planning Department applicant GPA-2025-3, Ka'ava Nui General Plan Amendment.
I move to amend and circulate.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. There is a floor amendment that needs to be.
Yes, okay, I move to amend and circulate it.
Second.
I'll suspend the rules. Director Hall on the floor amendment.
Thank you again, council members. Anna Hall, the planning department joined with Shirley Koga. This is also the draft amendment we submitted to you folks is a straight up housekeeping measure. It's the meets and bounds of the map to delineate the actual lines. So,
Any questions for Director Hall on the amendment? Councilor
Just,
Castro.
I mean, based on the bill. Oh no, we'll vote the amendment first. Sorry.
Any
No
questions,
questions
on the
on the
amendment?
amendment.
Any public testimony on the amendment? Call the meeting back to order. Discussion on the amendment. No discussion on the amendment. All in favor say aye on the amendment.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes on the amendment, and now we're back on the bill as amended. Discussion.
I have a question on the bill as amended.
Suspend the rules.
The bill as amended, if we make any changes to the 30% question on the prior bills, none of that is going to be affected by this bill, so we could pass this bill today, right? Or do we hold it
you
off?
don't want to. Quite
Okay.
honestly.
Okay.
The proposed 30% isn't embedded in this one. It's embedded in Chapter 10, but the Chapter 10 overlays on this general plan.
Okay.
So they should move as a. I'm with you. I'd love to move stuff
I
out,
just wanted to
but
make sure we weren't like, if there's stuff that we could keep moving, we could move it. Okay.
Any additional questions for Director Hall? Seeing none, call the meeting back to order. We're on the bill 2966 as amended.
Make a motion to defer to October 22nd.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Roll call.
Councilmembers Carvalho,
Aye.
Cowden,
Aye.
Kanashiro,
Aye.
Kuali'i, Committee Chair Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item, please.
Bill number 2967, a bill for an ordinance amending the state land use district boundary relating to a parcel located in Makaweli, Kauai, County of Kauai Planning Department applicant 8-2025-3, Ka'ava Nui State Land Use Amendment.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a move and approve, and do we also have a floor amendment housekeeping?
I move to amend and circulate it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll suspend the rules. Would you like to do a quick explanation, please?
This amendment that we're asking for is just, again, to add the meets and bounds to formalize.
Any questions for planning? Seeing none, any?
So,
oh,
just
Councilmember Collins?
clarifying, just so I heard right, it's kind of the same as the last bill, same thing. So we're going to defer it.
Yes.
Okay.
Seeing none, anyone wishing to testify? Seeing none, we call the meeting back to order. Any questions or comments, discussion on the amendment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment passed. Now we're back to the bill 2967 as amended.
Move to defer to October 22nd.
Second.
Let's move in second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Carvalho.
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuali'i.
Aye.
Chair Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item, please.
Bill number 2968, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Kauai County Code 1987, as amended, relating to zoning boundaries in Makawele and Wahiawa, Kauai, County of Kauai Planning Department applicant ZA-2025-10.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved in second, and this also has a floor amendment.
I move to amend and circulate it.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Suspend the rules, Director Hall.
Again, these are all housekeeping measures, meets and bounds, as well as the tiling of the exhibits and the survey map. I will just say that this ordinance already has the 30% baked into it. So as we go through the chair's proposed language and working through it, just to signal that this would also need to be aligned with it. So just putting that out there for as the discussions proceed. But ultimately, we're asking for a deferral as well on this one.
Any other questions for Director Hall? Is the rules to suspend any public testimony? Seeing none, I'll call the meeting back to order. Any discussion on this bill? Or on the amendment? I apologize. Nope. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes on the amendment. Final discussion on the bill as amended.
Move to defer to October 22nd.
Second.
Then moving to second, roll call vote.
Councilmember Carvalho.
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuali'i.
Aye.
Chair Bulasan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Seeing no items left on the planning committee, this adjourns the planning committee.
The Committee of the Whole will now come to order. Let the record reflect all members are present. We only have one item on the agenda, minutes of the August 6, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, and this concludes the committee. Thank you.